It says excellent connection, but like I cannot guarantee anything. So, someone say words.
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 All
Yo
right.
yo words.
Words by the Bard, or by Bo Burnham.
Yeah, I can't hear any audio actually. That's interesting.
Oh, well.
Is that? Oh, it's muted.
Oh,
Never mind.
Well.
Is that? Oh, it's muted.
Oh.
Yeah, all right. I was dumb. I think we're good. Cool. So, I pressed the M button, and I thought that would be enough, but it was not enough because of some reason. This software is gaslighting me. It's the software that's wrong, not me. I didn't miss the button. Okay, so...
Goddamn technology.
Yeah, they don't like freedom.
It's the feds again.
Yeah.
They're trying to shut down your stream, but make it think that it's your fault and you just did something wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
Blaming the feds, Rose? That's what a fed would say.
The feds are
You
trying
got
to...
me.
The feds are trying to rat out the
I can't hide
feds.
any longer, I don't think.
Because, like, if the
Oh,
feds...
it's okay, we're all feds here.
If the
That's
fed...
the only reason we don't agree with whatever libertarian thing that people are talking about today.
If anyone's a fed, it's Hody. He's too nice all the time.
Yeah, he's blending in.
Mm-hmm.
What
And
if
he
you met a
lacked
nice fed,
facial
Rose?
hair.
I'll be real with you.
I think I've denounced violence too many times for me to be a Fed. I think I'd be
That's
stoking
exactly
that
what a
flame,
Fed
right?
would say.
Mm-hmm.
Well, might as
So
well just put
Hody's
on my
the one
badge
the
and
feds-
hat.
Hody's the one the feds would try to turn, but Hody's actually too committed to principled Christianity to turn. So then they walk away, they're like, fuck, well, we're all out of ideas.
Eh. They're just... Well, you know, the thing is, like... what they would have to do is they would have to find a way to get one of those microwave, like those what's the term for it? It's like something acoustic. I think it might be psychoacoustic, but I can't specifically remember. It's a device that projects sound. And so what you would do is you would project sound into Hody's head and tell him that, like, this is the voice of God and you should go, you know, off some politician. You know, like, and then Hody would be like, well, this is now my sworn mission. I had a revelation. And, like, because they've been spying on him and, like, his Google searches, they know intimate details about his life that they could use to, like, yeah, this is the kind of person you are. Look at, they know, like, what he's been clearing out of his cookies. So, fucking...
It's just more Christian websites.
Yeah. Like, fucking, you don't have to be single at christianmingle.com.
He clears the Apologetics Press links. If Hody, you know what that is.
OnlyFans, but for Christians.
You don't show feet, you just show pictures of relatively, like cleavage-covered chicks in,
Only
like...
saints.
Yeah. Like, they're not showing ankle, they're not showing cleavage. They're just sort of, like, their cross is there, but it's on the outside of their shirt tastefully.
I was gonna say, like, it'll be like someone fully clothed, but like you can see their ankle.
Yeah, just like
Very-
the slight hint of, like the bottom of their neck.
On this stream, I'll be spending 3 hours shading Christ's abs on the cross.
Yeah.
You'll love it.
Yeah.
Subscribers only, though.
You gotta make sure them gutters are clean. There's gonna be some blood running down them.
Oh my god.
Anyway, now that this is off to a fucking stunning start, y'all here for Project 2025. We'll do intros briefly. We'll start with Kevin, and we'll go to Bigfoot, Bryce, Hody, Rose.
Start with me.
Yes.
So I'm Kevin. I'm a tech worker, mutualist from Maine. I like balanced economics, and as Kareem puts it, I'm half and half. So enjoy.
Big,
All right. My name is Bigfoot. I am a cryptid that lives in the woods and hates the government. And Project 2025 sounds like something that a government would come up with. So I hate it on the outset.
I'm Hody Johns. I'm with the Love First Christians, and Project 2025 is great comedy reading, and it'll be fun to discuss it with you guys.
I'm Bryce, Wisconsin CD3 rep for the XCOM and LPWI, state organizer for the Mises Caucus. 2025, be an interesting subject matter to discuss while I'm still able to be here.
All right, Rose?
I'm Rose, everybody's favorite anarchist without adjectives. I'm going to say Project 2025 sounds like your fairly standard wish list put forth by various think tanks hoping to influence the political system, but there's a lot of stuff in there that's... there are a few things that sound kind of interesting. Most of it is not cool, and it'll be fun to talk about.
Alright, so before we get started, everybody's impressions of Project 2025, like what they already know and what we could talk going forward, will basically be dependent on that. So let's start with the same order. Kevin, you can go first. What have you heard?
Oh yeah, because I didn't do a tagline for Project 2025 and everybody else did. My off-the-cuff impression is that they should call it Project 1984, but I recognize that I probably veer a bit to the left in this group of people, so I would probably say that. I've read the details. I don't like them. I'd be interested in people drilling down deeper, but it seems fairly autocratic, and I'm a pretty radical believer in democracy. So there we go.
Like I said earlier, Project 2025 sounds like a plan for governance, and as someone who is anti-government, I automatically come out anti-Project 2025. But as far as the specifics are concerned, I haven't read them personally myself, but I have had them described by trusted sources as, just some pretty out there conservative bullshit that, basically the opposite version of the globalist plan. And it just is ridiculous. So, I'm expecting to hear some funny shit and to make fun of it.
Boy, I want to keep this as concise as possible, but it's a little difficult. It's 922 pages. I have been through it. I actually went through it right as they were getting hacked, and so I read some of the goofball stuff that the hackers added in, and then had to go through later and be like, oh, okay, so they're not mandating clowns at birthday parties and stuff like that. So it's a lot. It's hard to gloss over. So I guess to try and give an overall impression, I do believe this is something conservatives want. It's certain things like bans on pornography. It's not an outright ban on abortion, but there are a lot of restrictions on it. There's a lot of misinformation on it, it doesn't call to end no faults divorce, and there's certain things that since it's 922 pages, like any bill, people hope you don't read it because the worst stuff is oftentimes in the details. I think the worst stuff, I guess, would just be concentrating power in every position. It's organized position by position within the executive branch, and just talks about how, if we get Trump elected, then hopefully Trump will, consolidate his power, of course, consolidate power in the cabinet positions, gets a little into the Supreme Court, everybody's surrounding him. They just want to make things more difficult. And it's general big power, and so I guess to say my general impressions, I think consolidation of power is bad. I don't care if it's federal, state, local, or even in your own household. The more somebody has undisputed say in power, the worse things are.
Right. Yeah, it sounds like a fairly standard wish list of things that various conservative and right-leaning groups hope Trump will do if he gets reelected, which looks fairly likely at this point. There are a few things that, not terrible ideas, such as ending the Department of Education, or then they want to defund the FBI, which is stupid. They should just want to abolish the whole thing. But yeah, then it's pretty standard conservative stuff like ending birthright citizenship, restrictions on immigration, tax cuts for certain politically privileged mega corporations, ending DEI. Let's see. They want to eliminate. Oh, they also want to eliminate certain other agencies such as the EPA, which I'm not necessarily against either. Yeah, it's pretty. I don't know. Like, again, it sounds primarily like a wish list, most of which is not actually going to happen. But it is an interesting glimpse into the minds of what conservative groups are currently focusing on trying to push through.
Yeah, I mean, admittedly, I have not read the whole thing, but from what little I do know, most of what there is in there is probably not going to actually ever happen. The consolidation of power, though, has kind of already been happening with every passing presidency, so that'll definitely happen. That'll happen even if Trump doesn't win, and it'll just be a Democrat consolidating power instead.
Right, and it's had input from tons of, I mean, it's from the Heritage Foundation, but it's had input from multiple different groups. Like there are some, like there are groups like the Family Research Council and other groups that basically want to implement a theocracy. And then there actually, I can't remember whose idea this was, but there actually was something about ending the Federal Reserve and switching the currency over to a gold-backed one, and those are not bad ideas at all.
Oh yeah, no,
Of course that would never actually happen, so it's not worth getting excited about. But yeah, it's not all bad. A lot of bad shit, but it's not all bad.
There are like glimpses of good shit in there.
And this is why people keep thinking conservatives can be reasoned with.
That shit will never actually happen, though. So,
yeah.
Pipe dream, goodbye.
Yep.
So, Bigfoot, what you got?
Oh, about Project 2025? I said it right after.
Sorry.
Right after the first guy.
Yeah. Distracted, trying to share this in as many places as possible.
It's a government bad. That was Bigfoot's.
Yeah, essentially, yeah. Like, I mean, I'm not going to read 900 pages of a conservative's wet dream, but I sure will believe that they jerk off with it. Like, I don't like it out of principle, and I'm sure the details will make for good pickings for conversation.
Yeah.
You
Sure.
get the original copy
We must
and
be
the pages
brothers
are
or
stuck
something.
together.
Sorry.
What were you going to say, Kevin?
I was going to say, Bigfoot, we must be brothers or something from Appalachia because we have almost the same opinion on this.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, it is the mountains are our home, It doesn't matter that we're like 1,500 miles away from each other. We're in the same set of woods, so, we're closer related than most people.
Yeah, so I'm going to generally I'll be starting with like elements from the Wikipedia page, and folks can look into any of these while we're on the stream. Hold any points that seem to be like inaccurate accountable. But like the first one that we can like really start to delve into. The census citizenship question. The project seeks to revive a Trump administration effort to include in the decennial U.S. Census question whether or not the person being counted is a U.S. citizen. The census is used to apportion congressional seats in the Electoral College. The Trump administration publicly argued it wanted the new question to prevent racial and language discrimination under the Voting Rights Act, an argument that the U.S. Supreme Court rejected for the 2020 census. The 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution says the congressional appointment figures must include, quote, the whole number of persons in each state, not citizens. So
keeping tabs on people is bad. This is one that the Bible actually speaks on. It's Satan that encourages David to take the census. Now, you might just say, like, what's so bad about being like, there's 5 people in my household and I'm a white Protestant. Well, the thing is if they've got tabs on you, that makes it a lot easier to tax you, a lot easier to keep track of you. As soon as they can keep track of you, when nations invented like the concept of the income tax, which is newer than you think, by the way, but when they invented this concept of the income tax, suddenly it became very important that they were able to keep tabs on every single citizen. Otherwise, you're not able to tax their income.
Track your
This
cattle.
resulted in a lot of wars happening, right? Now, we're already involved in a lot of wars. This isn't going to create any new ones, but it's going to make it much easier for them to be like, oh, hey, let's make sure to tax all these households. You know, let's make sure to keep track of these people. Let's get these people on lists. And yeah, the census is bad. That's a biblical thing as well as a political take from me.
Kevin.
I don't like it because I think it is a pretext to gather information on who isn't actually a citizen to prepare for some kind of enforcement action, particularly in the Southwest as it relates to undocumented Latino and Hispanic people. As an aside, I'm not 100% certain how you enforce that other than sending people door to door to check their citizenship, because I could just say I'm not a citizen if I want to screw with the census. I'm sure that lying on the census is technically illegal, but like, I don't know, I commit 3 felonies a day according to that book.
Yeah.
We all do, you know, so like, why would I, if I were not a citizen and you gave me a piece of paper that said, are you a citizen, check yes or no. If you check no, I'm going to send armed agents to your house to kidnap you and put you in a concrete and steel block filled with violent offenders and assaulters. I'm just going to hit yes.
Yeah. Like that line from Ghostbusters, you know, if someone asks you if you're a god, you say yes. Fucking. Anyway. Fucking, so, what do you think, Bryce?
Yeah, I mean, the census is incredibly flawed as is, so, like, even if it was strictly used for, like, a morally good reason, which, as Hody alluded to, isn't really a thing, it's so, like, it's impossible to accurately achieve. With that said, as Hody alluded to, as a Christian, I wholeheartedly oppose mass tracking of people, and fuck the census anyways. So, yeah.
What you got, Bigfoot? And then we'll go to Rose.
Pretty much what everybody else was saying. You know, first of all, fuck the census, because as y'all were saying, it is a method for allowing the government to track who, what, when, and where people are doing and talking and stuff like that. And, you know, I'm 100% against that because I obviously prefer my privacy.
Yeah.
But in addition, I absolutely hate the growth of the surveillance state and the idea that if you have nothing to hide, then, you know, you shouldn't worry about surveillance, because I feel like that's just a fundamental subversion of, like, what free living should mean and should be. And, you know, just fucking let people go where they want to. Like, borders are fake, imaginary. You made them up, so shut up about it.
Rose.
Yeah, I think I pretty much agree with everyone else here. Just don't give the state information, okay? Even if the people currently in power are actually telling the truth and they're not going to use it for nefarious purposes, doesn't mean that down the line that's not going to be used against you. Okay, look at bullshit like gun registration, okay? Oh,
Yeah.
We just need to know which gun belongs to which person. Okay, 10 years later, you know what? We've decided that these particular guns should be illegal, and now we have this convenient list of who owns what, so you can't hide them from us, okay? This shit always down the line ends up being weaponized in one way or another.
Exactly.
So don't fucking give the government any information about you or your family or what you do and do not own.
Reinhold, introduce yourself and say your opinion on a mandate to like tell the U.S. Census Bureau if you're a citizen or not.
Okay, my name's Reinhold. Been with Libertarian movement since, you know, kind of the late 80s. And as far as the census goes, not a real big fan of giving the government information or anything like that. And really, with Project 2025, my issue with Project 2025 is not the fact that it's basically the Pat Buchanan paleo strategy embodied in 900 pages. It's the means in which they're going to implement it that bothers me.
All right. So the next element, the first person I'm gonna I'll wait for Rose to get back, but the first person I'm gonna go to talk about the next element is Hody because of the subject. So we'll get to that subject. But before any of this, I just want to say that I think it's a little on the nose for anybody who's familiar with fucking like Amazon's series about the rise of fascism in a superhero environment. I just think it's funny that one of the people involved in this project is called Russell Vought. The boys, the company that's, let's just say, responsible for a significant amount of corruption. Anybody who's seen it knows what I'm talking about, but I'm not going to spoil it too much. In case you haven't, knows the name Vought. And I think that's funny. I think it's funny, you know? It's just funny. I think somebody unmuted. Ah, alright. So, I don't know, Rose is still out, I guess. We'll get started on this element. The first paragraph here. Christian nationalism. As the leader of the Center for Renewing America, Project 2025 contributor Russell Vought has spearheaded an effort to instill precepts of Christian nationalism into government and public life should Trump win a second term. In a 2021 opinion piece, Vought wrote that Christian nationalism, quote, recognizes America as a Christian nation, end quote, and makes, quote, a commitment to institutional separation between church and state, but not the separation of Christianity from its influence on government and society, end quote. According to Vought, Christians are under assault, and he has sought to use his regular contacts with Trump to, quote, elevate Christian nationalism as a focal point, end quote, should Trump be reelected president. Vought has close ties with another Trump administration official and Christian nationalist William Wolfe, who, according to Online Manifesto, seeks to implement a Bible-based system of government, whereby Christ-ordained civil magistrates exercise authority over the American public. In February 2024, former Christian nationalist Brad Onishi, who now studies religion and extremism, noted that Lance Wallnau of the New Apostolic Reformation, who has said Trump was anointed, had recently announced he was partnering with Charlie Kirk, a Project 2025 member. Onishi observed that Speaker of the House Mike Johnson has direct ties to the New Apostolic Reformation. In his 2024 campaign speeches, Trump has echoed various aspects of Project 2025, including the promotion of Christian nationalism. Hody.
So, what we have here is a great example of what Christian nationalists do to promote Christian nationalism. Very, very rarely do they actually throw out like a public thing that just says, hey, I want all my crazy things to happen all at once. Because really within the document itself, and I'm going to point out a few things, there's actually very little that promotes Christian nationalism. I believe it does want to recognize Christianity is like the official religion of the nation, something that people have been pushed for. It actually does reaffirm the separation of church and state, but it takes issue with times that people aren't permitted to practice their religion if they are within the state. Something that might sound like you agree with, but usually what they're talking about is like, oh, I hate the gays. From my religion tells me to hate the gays, and so they're not allowed to be married. And so even though the state has said, oh, that we recognize their marriages, I'm not going to sign off on them, and we shouldn't have to sign off on them. So there is like a bad conflict there hidden within those words. But I think the most important takeaway from this is that this is the grease, right? This is the slippery slope. This is the front that they're using to get to. We know what all the people who wrote it want. Jeremy just read it. These people want while it doesn't ban no-fault divorce, we know that they've said that before. They do want to ban on pornography. That is within here. The thing is what they're going to promote is just a step in the direction of what they want.
Right.
So the way to stop them from getting to that direction they want of Christian nationalism is to cut out their steps, right? This is a huge cultural problem. This is the beginning. Project 2025 is the start of, if they get stuff like this happening, it moves them into the direction of full-on Christian nationalism.
Right.
You know the author well enough, to know that they're nuts. And even if you say, well, but they didn't put that nutty thing within Project 2025, okay, but you know what they want, right? Like, this is no different than, say, libertarian extremists, right? And I love them. I love the heck out of them. But when we promote a book that we try to sell to the mainstream, they can easily look us up and say, oh, this book is kind of just in the direction of what they actually want. Mm-hmm. Now, in that case, I think what the libertarians want is actually really a good thing. Christian nationalism is a terrible thing. I guess I'll go over this just as briefly as I can. Very few things are more explicitly condemned by Christ, the Bible, Old Testament, New Testament, than the concept of nationalism. It is one of those things. There's a book. There's a book by Wolf called In Defense of Christian Nationalism. Within the first, I believe in the first chapter, he's like, hey, just so you know, I'm not going to talk about the Bible. I'm just going to talk about policies that I think will move us in the direction of what I consider to be Christian nationalism. Right off the bat, he establishes I'm not going to get into the theocracy element of it. Why doesn't he do that? Well, frankly, because Christianity is very, very, very opposed to the concept of division by nations. The identity, you are all one in Christ's kingdom. The more you separate yourself out from the world, the worse it is. Christianity thrives not by being on its own, but by going into the middle of Rome, to the middle of Ethiopia, to the middle of India, to the middle of places that are hostile to your faith. That is where Christianity thrives. The idea that Christians need to set up a government that coddles their beliefs completely rejects the model that Christ sent out for us. If your Christianity is functional, it will function despite the government trying to stop it, or people trying to stop it. If your Christianity is loving, then you will go to a culture that craves it to the point where they could kill you, and your religion still spreads like wildfire because of what you've spread. When Christians get involved with government, it's a concession that they've rejected the gospel, because the gospel is good news. People want it. People crave it. It will spread on its own. When a tyrant says, oh, I have to make this possible, otherwise no one's going to possibly believe it, that's how we know it's not Christianity anymore. Christianity is something people want. When you promote something people don't want, you need to get the government involved, right? Good ideas don't require force. Christianity is loaded with good ideas. This is a way to just try to add some force to it. And it should be completely rejected outright. And more importantly, what this reveals is the steps taken in that direction should be rejected outright as well. Don't give in just because it's it's not as bad as people say. Sure, but it will be as bad as people say. Don't even give an inch in that direction. Just remember, Christian nationalism 20 years ago, if you even said it, all the Christians would be like, oh, please, nobody actually believes that stuff. It's so garbage. It's so untrue. And now they can get in the middle of the RNC. They can go to the middle of CPAC and be like, I'm a Christian nationalist, and get a round of applause, standing ovation. This is the problem when you allow them an inch. If you really like the Malay, don't give the shit libs an inch or whatever. Don't give them any quarter. Don't give them any room to believe. Okay, why would it be any different from Christian nationalism? Don't give them an inch. Do not let them promote evil.
Yeah, and real quick, completely just, I just need to say this. Case for Christian Nationalism by Wolf. The book is endorsed by Andrew Isker and Andrew Torba. Isker says it's the most comprehensive work of Christian political theory written in the modern age. And Torba says it's a must-read for pastors, political leaders, and everyone in between. And the reason both of those people are relevant to this book is because they use those two endorsements as a way to advertise the book on Amazon and elsewhere. And when you look at what these two wrote a book called Christian Nationalism, A Biblical Guide for Taking Dominion and Discipling Nations, and that was promoted as the accolades with these people. That like it literally is promoting that book as well in the promotion of this book. And that book is basically just a pamphlet that tells you to go support Gab. And Gab is full of Nazis. So if Stephen Wolf, Andrew Isker, and Andrew Torba are willing to stand by anything, you should really use that as a cautionary tale against it, because holy shit, is that not a good sign when, at least if you actually want freedom, when, the literal Nazi website and its associated fascist religious theocracy people are the ones promoting it. It's yeah, you fucked up. You're not a... Anyway, Rose, go. Sorry.
I was going to say, so it seems like the Christian nationalists have actually lost ground in recent years. I just remember, during the Bush administration, we had these evangelicals who had a considerable amount of political sway. They'd get on TV or they'd attend Republican conventions or speeches given by the Bush administration, talking about how we had to support our troops because it's what God wanted. It seems like they had a huge amount of political power back then, which they kind of have lost in recent years, and they're trying to get that back.
Now, Rose, you are correct. The deal is they would deny the label. They would act as Christian nationalists. But if you were that's Christian nationalism, they'd be no. This is just, God rewards good nations that practice good values.
They were trying to convince us that
just an evangelist in a Christian nation.
Expansionism in foreign countries was somehow, in line with Christian values. I don't know how that wouldn't be Christian nationalism.
No, and it is. And to be very clear, this is why they had to reject the label so often, is because people would be that's Christian nationalism. Mm-hmm. And they would be no. And now they're actually just embracing it. So you are correct. This has been a force for well before the 20-year time frame that I gave you. I'm just saying back then they would at least pretend that they weren't. And now they are just willing to be yeah, we are.
Okay.
Anybody else on this Christian nationalism plague?
Yeah, I'll address it. So first off, yes, Rose, you are absolutely right. They had a lot more ground during the Bush administration, and as we all know, the reason they lost that ground is because the Forever Wars lost so much favor so fucking rapidly that it's yo, you guys are fucked up. Get out of here. And it ended up going in the complete opposite direction. To go back to Hodey's point, yeah, there's a reason Christian nationalists don't use the Bible to justify anything they're doing. It's because, first off, inherently in the teachings of Christianity, there's a very large element of anti-statism in there. But even if you stories within the Bible literally will spell out how Christians should theoretically feel about the state. No better example than what happened with Jesus and in his whole crucifixion and whatnot. Just countless stories, even beyond that, of just no, statism bad, nationalism bad. And it's unfortunate that a lot more Christians don't see that.
Yeah.
It's always funny when they support cops. If I'm sure you've all seen the memes of them at the crucifixion, and they're well, he should have just obeyed the law.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I want to see what happened before the cameras. So, generally speaking, I think we can all agree that's not a good plank. If nobody else, Reinhold, you got anything? It's fine if you do. It's fine if you don't.
I think,
no, not being
not
being a Christian myself.
Yeah.
I'm obviously not a fan of that, but
sorry, what?
Kevin, do you have something to say?
wanted to say that I don't believe for a minute that they give a shit about the separation of church and state. That's just lip service. They threw it in there to ward off any sort of discussion. But
you got to remember,
Right.
you got to remember too. Rand Paul made this very clear years ago when he was talking to a evangelical group.
Yes.
They believe that the separation of church and state just means that the government shouldn't be telling Christians what to do, but the Christians should be able to tell the government what to do.
Yep. Yeah, and he also go.
It's particularly hilarious, like, because these are some of the first people who will be panicking about Sharia law coming to America. Basically all the same things. They just want their own version.
So I got
go.
I have a comment before we move on to the next plank. You know, you guys know my shtick by now. So in 1640, we had one of the first American theocracies, and as all theocracies go over time, the purity spiral led to effectively hell on earth. And I remember, let's see, I'm trying to remember the exact phrasing. There was a letter written, a petition written and sent to the governor of Massachusetts about the state of the theocracy there, where he was basically like, you seek to make Christians by making or by making earth a hell or something like that. And you know what he got for that complaint letter? He got his entire fucking back skinned by whipping and then thrown into like the fucking river until he died, because that's how theocracies go. They go worse and worse and worse until they eventually become nearly worse than any tyrant atheist could be, I would say. But anyway, you know, we fucking do this. We did this already. Like, we learned our lesson to stop making theocracies.
Yep. Jason Sandoz in comments, first comment we got, too often we forget that each side represents one half, like each side, Republicans and Democrats, represents one half of the Nazis in charge.
Yeah, well, they
Oh yeah,
don't
100%.
really differ by much.
Yeah.
Just want their own slightly different versions, and they'll pay lip service to slightly different social causes.
Yeah. Alright, so next section we got, because, like, there's quite a bit here, but
Yeah, 9 pages.
yeah. The next section is climate change mitigation. Advises a future Republican president to go further than merely nullifying President Biden's executive orders on climate change. It proposes abandoning strategies for reducing greenhouse gas emissions responsible for climate change, including by repealing regulations that curb emissions, downsizing the Environmental Protection Agency, and abolishing the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, which the project calls one of the main drivers of the climate alarm industry. In particular, the EPA's Office of Environmental Justice and External Civil Rights would be closed, and the EPA staff, including the science advisor, would be selected based on managerial skills rather than scientific qualifications. States would be prevented from adopting stricter regulations on vehicular emissions, as the state of California has, and regulations on the fossil fuel industry would be relaxed. For example, restrictions on oil drilling imposed by the Bureau of Land Management would be removed. Heritage Foundation Energy and Climate Advisor Diana Furgot-Roth, I think that's how you pronounce that, I don't care, has suggested that the EPA consume more natural gas, despite climatologists' concern that this would increase leaks of methane, a greenhouse gas more potent than carbon dioxide, in the short term. Project 2025 blueprint includes repealing the Inflation Reduction Act, which offers $370 billion for clean technology, closing the Loan Programs Office and the Office of Clean Energy Demonstrations at the Department of Energy, eliminating climate change mitigation from the National Security Council's agenda, and encouraging allied nations to use fossil fuels. The blueprint declares that federal government has an obligation to develop vast oil and gas coal resources and supports Arctic drilling. Under this blueprint, the expansion of the national grid would be blocked and the transition to renewable energy stymied. Mandy Gunaskera a contributor to the project, acknowledges the reality of human-made climate change, but considers it a politicized and overstated issue. On the other hand, project director Paul Dans accepts only that climate change is real, not that humans actively cause it. Project 2025 would reverse a 2009 EPA finding that carbon dioxide emissions are harmful to human health, preventing the federal government from regulating greenhouse gas emissions. It further recommends incentives for members of the general public to, quote, identify scientific flaws in research misconduct and to legally challenge climatology research. The report's climate section was written by several people, including Gunaskar, the EPA's former chief of staff, who considers herself principal to the U.S. withdrawal from the Paris Agreement in 2017. Bernard McNamee, a lawyer who has advised several fossil fuel companies, drafted the section of Project 2025 describing the EPA's role. 4 of the report's top authors have publicly engaged in climate change denial. McNamee dismisses climate change mitigation as a progressive policy. Republican climate advocates have disagreed with Project 2025's climate policy. Joseph Rainey, Center for Public Policy President Sarah Hunt, considered supporting the Inflation Reduction Act crucial, and Utah Representative John Curtis said it was vital that the Republicans engage in supporting good energy and climate policy. American Conservation Coalition founder Benji Backer noted growing consensus among younger Republicans that human activity causes climate change and called the project wrong-headed. So, thoughts on that?
So,
I mean, I'll
issue. Go ahead, Bryce.
I was gonna say I'll go first because I got to dip out of here very soon. There are definitely some things, and like you will never hear me complain about peeling back regulations. The problem is, we all know that that these people are getting money from big oil companies
Yes.
and shit of that nature. So like peeling back regulations on its own is completely fine. Like, yes, get rid of them. They're garbage and they've only plunged your country further into the shit. The problem is they're only doing it so that the people that give them money can do shit.
Yep, didn't have more
and
money
not
to give
have
them.
to worry about the consequences.
Yeah. Yeah, like Heritage Foundation is mass oil money. It's very coke linked, very oil pilled. It's very much just a like if you have like a pro oil agenda, you go through the Heritage Foundation, you go through all their linked projects, you go through all their fucking like so yeah, 100%. And like the Koch brothers literally got their money through Nazi oil, so
Right. Yeah. No, a lot of these think tanks have very good reason to be supporting fossil fuels, and that's because, again, that's how they make their money. So the climate change issue is an interesting one, though, because, like, look, are humans influencing and changing their environment? Probably. Are we accelerating the process of climate change? Probably. However, this fact is definitely being used by some very powerful people to justify power grabs. And yeah, a lot of these so-called environmental protection measures are clearly just being used to grab more control and more influence over the population. In addition, getting off of fossil fuels is like, I'm all for it, but it's going to be a gradual process. Like, it's something that can be done overnight. People will die if we try to immediately transition to clean energy because the technology is just not there yet. Like, this needs to be, I think the free market, as usual, will have the best solutions, but it's going to happen gradually. Like, you can't just try to switch people over to, say, wind and solar, because again, like, they're not as reliable and you're going to have people dying.
yeah. Reinhold, you got your hand up for a bit.
Sure. One thing I wanted to point out in that little section, and some people might miss, is that they're not calling for an end to the EPA. They're calling for the EPA to then regulate the way they want them to, not the way that they're currently being regulated. And another thing that they point out is that they want to enforce federalism. They want the federal government to be in charge of all these states, whereas on just all these other things, they're saying the state should make the decision. The state should do this. The state should do this. But when it comes to stuff that they don't like, suddenly they want to use the EPA to tell the states what they can and can't do. It's the same thing that they were doing with what Florida was trying to do with Moms for Liberty and that sort of thing, where they were shutting down things like that.
Moms for Liberty.
Yeah, it's the people who complain about the federal government imposing their will over the states until it's something they want. And this is a perfect example of that. Now, the EPA should be 100% non-governmental agency.
Be well, Bryce. Thank you for coming.
Right. But that's because that takes out the politics of it. Right. The EPA should be an NGO that has the best people thinking about this and giving their recommendations, but it shouldn't be anything enforced by the government. It should be things that are just put out there so people understand and they can make decisions on their own.
Yeah, a third-party auditor like UL.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Well, and just real quick, because, okay, here's something. It's so anger. Fucking federal government, when people say that. Fuck you. Shut the fuck up. Federal government. Holy shit. It doesn't matter if it's the state government or the federal government. It's still bad, even if it's your guys doing it. Shut the fuck up. Sorry, I had to. I think you'll agree with that. It gets in there. It gets in there. I'm psychotic.
The states' rights crowd is going to disagree with you there.
Yeah, they can.
A lot of libertarians still lean towards the states' rights. Like, I think a lot of people who go through the minarchist phase.
County rights.
Yeah.
We gotta represent county rights. States are way too large.
Oh yeah, states are still way too large, and I mean, there was a brief period where I'm like, okay, I think states' rights are better because it's a little more localized, but now that can backfire though. Like in some cases, okay, yeah, states can nullify unjust federal laws. In other cases, they can actually be more authoritarian, and federal laws were actually making things better. So it can go either way.
I do want to say, from a libertarian standpoint, if you don't have the right to hurt somebody else's property, then you don't have the right to poison their air or poison their water.
Yes.
Now,
Oh, yeah.
this is something that the federal government pretends to do a good job of, but they actually certify, license, and authorize the biggest offenders as far as this is concerned. So the thing is a lot of libertarians, knowing that fact, will be like, all right, yeah, get the feds out of the way. But what is Project 2025 explicitly called for? Less of the stuff that doesn't pollute your air and more of the stuff that does. It's notable that they're not pushing for nuclear energy. They're pushing for coal. They're not pushing for salt reactors. They're not pushing for thorium. All of these amazing options, they're not pushing for that. They're pushing for things that pollute your air, pollute your water. And this is something that big businesses love because they can easily pay the license fee. They can dump it into somebody's water. The Cuyahoga River, right? Isn't that the one that caught fire? Very notably, because it caught fire. The steel mill that polluted into it, because everybody's like, this is how we got the EPA going to where it is today. That steel mill that did it still continued to do it. They just had to pay an annual license to do it. And they still do. And the EPA approves it every time. And what happens is the grime and the crud and the pollution go downriver onto your property. Government doesn't care about it. Project 2025 takes the issue, could make it good. This is similar to when it's like, hey, people revolting in the government, good, in order to make Trump dictator, very bad, right? Almost good, but bad, right? Get the feds out of it, good. Oh, no, wait, but actually get more of the feds into it and have them authorize the worst type of energy that we could be pushing for right now. Very bad. By the way, we get a lot of this oil from people that do not have our best interests at heart. It's just a mistake.
Yeah, and fucking go. Sorry, go.
Oh no, something tells me there's not going to be calls for accountability for companies such as BP when their negligence causes them to spill oil all throughout the Gulf.
Yeah, and a good example. Okay, here's the thing. So anybody who's been following me knows what I'm about to say. Texaco, fuck Texaco. Texaco coming down to Ecuador, fucking up the land, dumping a bunch of waste pits that leaked, and they leaked into local water sources to the point where everything was contaminated and corrupted, and told the locals, hey, this has fucking vitamins in it, it's good for your hair.
Yep.
And these people started to, like, use that shit, and 30,000 people fucking died, wiping out a tribe that had been there for longer than Texaco had, and actually, like, were good stewards of the fucking land. And
But their hair was immaculate.
yeah, I'm
if
so
that
sure.
didn't actually happen, Jeremy, that would sound like an episode of a sitcom or something.
Yeah, but
With the scummy character, you know, being a scumbag. Oh, it's good for your hair, and then the laugh track starts. You know.
yeah, but like.
Um,
In this case, like, literally, the lack of regulation in these industries was manifest because the lawyer who, like, prosecuted on behalf of the tribe and tried to get them fucking restitution for the fucking mass murder, he went to jail because the judge prosecuting the case was bought by Chevron, who eventually, like, took over Texaco. So, yeah. Fuck these people and their agenda to control the fucking regulatory industries, because clearly they won't give a shit when literal violations of human liberty happen. It's like Trump's ear gets nicked and we've all got to, like, you know, worship at the Republican cock, but 30,000 people die due to oil, like, mismanagement, and suddenly those people are the ones who need less regulation. Suck a fucking AIDS-infested cunt.
Jeremy, you know who the biggest polluter in the world actually is?
U.S. military.
Yep.
Yep.
The military.
Oh, yeah.
War machines run a lot of money. Like, I debate with liberals a lot who are like, oh, if you get rid of weapon regulations, rich people can own tanks. And I'm like, well, okay, they'll have to pay, what, $300 to start them?
Yeah.
Like, and then you're doing gallons per mile, not miles per gallon. That's how much it costs to run a tank.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll believe that that these people actually care about environmental protection when they stop detonating test nukes over the fucking ocean.
Yep.
But then complaining that, yeah, we're the ones causing climate change by running our heat in the middle of winter or by driving to and from work.
Well, and just like, you know, hey, actually, this is a good tie-in. Y'all should watch my recent appearance on Agorapod. It'll be available as the actual podcast episode, where I go against AI again and talk about how its consciousness is possible and it would not be a good thing. AI is a boom right now, and the people, like, most responsible for that boom are conservative tech bros. And those people are, like, draining water from so many places to run huge data centers and, like, you know, mass managing, like, a huge amount of electrical resources, which are also a result of the grid. And these people are doing that so that they can fuel an AI boom, so that they can, like, rob people of their actual talents and replace them with robots. And so, like, those people are the same people who are, like, trying to get this, like, regulatory bullshit, like, eased up. I wonder why. It's almost like these people pollute a whole shit ton, and they use, like, you know, fucking alarmism against Democrats and socialism and whatever else as a way to, like, spur people toward their direction. But they're actually just evil.
No, clearly Bitcoin is the problem with all the processing power it takes to mine. So we have to heavily regulate that. But no, AI, that's not a concern at all.
Yeah, like, see, here's the thing. Bitcoin, a large amount of Bitcoin, they literally build it in sustainable, like, environments, like Bitcoin and other cryptos, because if you pay for energy, it's less of an investment. AI is just losing money on a significant scale. There's an article Bigfoot shared with us a while back that I think is very valuable, and I think everybody should read it. It's an article against AI, and the article, like, addresses the AI issue from the perspective of a programmer. And if I can find that article, I'll let y'all know what it is. But like, basically, the article, it has, like, a huge amount of good things to say on the issue of AI being sort of a boom that, like, people invested in tech want you to think is much bigger and better than it is. It's called "I will fucking pile drive you if you mention AI again." And the first section of the article ends with a paragraph that says, "So it is with great regret that I announce that the next person to talk about rolling out AI is going to receive a complimentary chiropractic adjustment in the style of Dr. Bourne, i.e., I'm going to break your fucking neck. I'm truly deeply sorry." It's very good. People should read that. So the general
Great
vibe.
read.
What?
I just said great read.
Yeah, like
I quite enjoyed it.
the guy goes over the fact that basically this is a whole lot of hype for a product that most use cases shouldn't be using, and that isn't ready for the use cases where it might even be useful. And so many people are pumping so much into this, and it's just like, it's not only infuriating in terms of what it's already costing people, and the inferior products people are using to replace real human creativity and bullshit, but it's also like bad because it's not good, by default, and it's not ready for the use cases people want to fucking jam it into. Conservative tech bros love that shit, but they hate, fucking like climate policies. I wonder why. It's almost like, if you want to do a lot of these more fashy sort of human replacement sort of like, policies stepping us toward a society where tech bros control everything, you would maybe need to reduce the regulations a bit. It's sort of interesting, though. It's sort of interesting because, like, Elon Musk, he's got, like, the regulatory credits thing going, where he's basically stealing from other auto manufacturers, like, getting the government to take money from them who do not do the government's bidding in terms of the environment to give it to him. He's also getting a bunch of tax credits for like his vehicles being environmentally like carbon neutral and whatever. And pay no attention to the fact that they keep blowing up. Pay no attention to the fact that if they have a tiny issue, you basically have to return the whole car. Pay no attention to the Cybertruck and how it's just completely botched in every conceivable way. Pay no attention to the fact that SpaceX is constantly fucking blowing up rockets, and their most recent rocket had a rapid unscheduled disassembly as well. Pay no attention to all of this shit. Just keep giving Elon Musk green money. So it is a little interesting that Elon Musk wouldn't be more upset about this.
Well, maybe, I guess, I don't know, are there parts of it that are written in such a way that would benefit him specifically? Or...
Oh yeah, they hate LGBT people. We'll get to that.
Yeah, I figured we'd get to that subject.
And
The next section actually might do it.
And he also hates immigrants. So, yeah.
Okay.
Which is interesting because without
Yeah, like the codes are generally pro-immigration, but in a self-serving way, because they're just interested in importing cheap labor. So, yeah, that's an interesting one.
Well, he specifically claims that he ascribes to the whole like white replacement theory, and he also ascribes to a bunch of other shit that says like migrants are voting Democrat, like even though there's no evidence, migrants are committing more crime. There's no evidence. Just things that he needs to shut the fuck up about, basically. But we'll get into that. Because the next section of this, unless anybody has anything else to say about the climate change thing. And we'll probably...
I'm just gonna say Stirling engines are the future, and they were invented in the 1800s. That's all.
We'll probably do another one of these. I'll see if Thursday works for y'all, because I got somebody who wants to show up, and Thursday works for him. And there's so many planks to this that we'll probably have another episode. So let me know if Thursday works for y'all.
That's when the Mad Liberty Project is doing their next stream.
Isn't that like at 2 p.m. though?
Fred said 7.
Okay, well we'll try to make it work alongside that. Because I think we can do both in the same day. I don't think that'd be a problem. Feel free to send this to the join link to Brett as well. Like I sent it to them, and
they weren't home yet.
Okay. Well, whatever. Sorry, what?
I said I know they were interested.
Gotcha. Well, if they do want to show up, still they're free too. So the next thing is economy. It provides a range of options for economic reform, that vary in their degree of radicalism. It's critical of the Federal Reserve, which it blames for the business cycle, and proposes abolishing it. It advocates for free banking and or the dollar being backed by a commodity such as gold. It recommends eliminating full employment from the Federal Reserve's mandate, instead focusing solely on targeting inflation. The project envisions eventually moving from an income tax to a consumption tax, such as a national sales tax. In the interim, the project seeks to extend the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017. It further recommends simplifying individual income taxes to 2 flat tax rates, 15% on incomes up to the Social Security wage base, $168,600 in 2024, and 30% above that. An unspecified standard deduction would be included, but most deductions, credits, and exclusions would be eliminated. The proposal would likely increase taxes significantly for millions of low and middle income households. It aims to reduce the corporate tax rate from 21 to 18, calling it the most damaging tax in the country. So basically, if you're a corporation, you get to have a tax cut greater than most people. In the 2017 TCJA cut the rate from 35 to 21. It proposes reducing the capital gains rate for high earners to 15 from the 2024 level of 20. After these reforms are implemented, it recommends that a 3/5 vote threshold be required to pass legislation that increases individual corporate income tax to create a wall of protection for these reforms, despite a wide consensus that enforcing legislation that builds a subsequent Congress is unconstitutional. Taken all together, these proposals are expected to increase the U.S. government deficit. The project proposes merging the Bureau of Economic Analysis, a Census Bureau, and the Bureau of Labor Statistics into a single organization, and aligning its mission with conservative principles. It recommends maximizing the hiring of political appointees in statistical analysis positions. It suggests abolishing the Economic Development Administration and the Department of Commerce, and, if that proves impossible, having the EDA instead assist rural communities destroyed by the Biden administration's attack on domestic energy production. By 2023, the Biden administration had already granted more permits for oil and gas drilling than did its predecessor. Project 2025 also seeks to facilitate innovations in the civilian nuclear industry. So, that's a key thing right there. I'll come back to that. Project declares that God ordained the Sabbath as a day of rest, and recommends legislation requiring that Americans be paid more for working on Sunday. It also aims to institute work requirements for people reliant on the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, which issues food stamps. Project 2025 is split on the issue of foreign trade. Mandate author Peter Navarro advises a fair trade policy of reciprocal higher tariffs on the European Union, China, and India to achieve a balance of trade, though not all U.S. levies are lower than those of its major trading partners. On the other hand, mandate author Kent Lassman of the Competitive Enterprise Institute promotes a free trade policy of lowering or eliminating tariffs to cut costs for consumers, and calls for more free trade agreements. He argues that Trump's and Biden's tariffs have undermined not just the American economy, but also the nation's international alliances. Regarding banking regulation, Project 2025 recommends merging the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency and the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation and National Credit Union Administration and the Federal Reserve's non-monetary supervisory and regulatory functions. In a footnote, the document says that, quote, deposit insurance undermines the incentives of bank depositors to monitor bank portfolios. So, the thing that's sort of most yikesy to me right here is I guess there's things. I'll just say a few things. First off, claiming that the Christian religion should be coddled specifically so that Christians who work on anybody who works on Sunday gets paid more by a mandate. To me, that is anti-separation of church and state, and what it also does is it means that, because of that, anybody who says anything about minimum wage going forward who supported this is absolutely hypocritical. Because if you're upset about minimum wage, but you say you want a minimum wage because they're working on Sundays, then you're basically saying no minimum wage if you're one of those dirty socialist, commie, hippie, liberal, millennial, Gen Z, fucking something or other. But if, like, you want a minimum wage on Sunday, suddenly it's okay because my God or something. Instead of just keeping the Sabbath holy and not working because you say I'm not going to work then because you're a Christian, like, you say the Bible should say, be in charge here and say, like, oh yeah, you get more money. And then at the same time, they want to make it harder for people to get food stamps if they're not on the job, but they're not actively doing anything to increase the amount of available jobs or reduce the, like, barriers to entry. So they're basically saying starve more. I hate those things, and I also hate the fucking cucking to oil for, like, domestic civilian energy production. Like, yo, like, the fucking oil producers do not need help, and they've been actively getting help from the Biden administration. This isn't, like, a Trumpian thing. This is a fucking oil billionaire thing.
So it's extremely rare to hear any sort of mainstream political entity acknowledge the business cycle and the role that the Fed plays in it. So that's an interesting one, because clearly these entities do not actually want separation of state and currency or separation of state and banking. So they're acknowledging it, but, like, but do they actually want to replace it with, I guess, would be the question.
Yeah, and like, that's the
think
in
this case. Oh, I was just going to say, I think that in this case, it's more like a monkey see, monkey do sort of situation where they were like, a lot of the anti-establishment people seem to be against the Fed. So, if we say that we're against the Fed, it's not like we actually have to abolish the Fed in the end. We'll just, make references to that to get them on our side. But at the exact same time, they're arguing for the same bullshit protectionism and bullshit that leads business cycles to exist even before the creation of the Fed. So it's like, well, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah, even if you have a commodity-backed currency, like, okay, that offers some check, I guess, on the degree to which it can be inflated. However, expansion of the monetary supply was still a problem, even when the U.S. dollar was still gold-backed, and even before the Fed itself was established, but the state still had control over the currency and could expand it. So this has, for as long as there has been a state-mandated currency, there have been issues with the business cycle. But I don't think these people actually want total separation of state and banking. I think they want their own version of control over the currency that they can manipulate to their ends. So perhaps the Fed is not serving them in the way that they want any longer. But I don't think they actually want to eliminate that type of system entirely. I think they just want their own version of it, if I had to guess.
Yep, like Javier Milei.
Yeah, he's not. I mean, if he were actually anti-central bank, he wouldn't still be alive. He'd be dead under mysterious circumstances.
Hody, you want to talk about them using your religion to increase minimum wage on Sunday?
Yeah, it's super wuss to be like, I need the state to reward me as opposed to needing God to reward you. The whole point of Christianity is that it's a better way of life. But if you need the government to make it a better way of life, then it is not a better way of life. It is simply a way of life that you need some type of tyrant or emperor to make a better way of life. I believe truly that most people will be rewarded by keeping the Sabbath holy, by taking a day of rest. I believe that this is good for people, right? Like, I think this is a great thing to do. I believe that God will reward your business endeavors, but there's a difference between God rewarding you and your favorite politician rewarding you. We do not need to, like, mandate, subsidize, whatever, all the good aspects of Christianity. That's antithetical to Christianity. The thing is and I say this with both the Christianity stuff and the Fed stuff. This is a carrot on a stick.
Yep.
This is meant to make you go, hey, I don't like the Fed, or hey, I'm a Christian. Those are great things to be. I like that people are Christians, and I like that people don't like the Fed. But what they're trying to do is get you to buy into something that is terrible for other people, even if it ends up being good for you, which I don't think it would be, but it's terrible for most people. And if you're loving your neighbor, you can't allow yourself to be like, well, but if they're going to love me more than, my neighbor is going to get hurt, but I'm going to get rewarded. That's not very loving of your neighbor. And that's not loving your neighbor as yourself. If you're loving your neighbor yourself, you're going to push for, hey, if you're going to give me that break, then they get that break too. Atheists get that time off too. Jews too. Muslims too. We all get paid. You know what I mean? Like this is not love your neighbor as yourself. I guess it's reiterated often enough in the scriptures that this should be a non-starter for anybody who considers themselves a Christian.
Absolutely. Anyone else want to throw some hot dogs down the hallway?
I did want to bring up one section of that kind of got missed. The replacement of people who have knowledge of aspects of the department to be replaced by political appointees, which is the main issue with Project 2025 that everybody wants to kind of ignore and forget about. Is not just we have all these policies we want to put in place. It's how are we going to do it? We're going to put a bunch of political appointees in place so that when whoever's the president says do this, there's no question they will just do it. Is it like when Trump wanted to shoot at protesters and Esper said no, you can't do that. He got told no, he couldn't do it. They wouldn't do that. He wants to eliminate that going forward. The elimination of anybody saying no.
Yeah, remove any barriers.
Yeah. Cause I missed the beginning, so I don't know how much of this was talked about before then. But that's the most nefarious part of this,
right?
And is the part that Trump tried to put in place at the end of his term. He just didn't get it put in time to help him with where he wanted to help it with. So that's why this was all written, was to put together a list of 50 to 100,000 people that they could just put in place day one, a bunch of yes men, so that they can just do whatever they want to and ignore any checks and balances from the Supreme Court or Congress.
Hey, that's not nice. Some of them are yes women. So with that being said, if nobody has any words about the words that were just wordsed, I can proceed to the next section of words, and we can words about the words.
I'm actually just going to dip out because I got the first day of my new job tomorrow, so I want to be extra well rested.
Not a
Love
problem.
streaming like usual, and I'm now going to go finish scrubbing out my fridge because that's what I was doing before I realized it was 6.
Gotcha. Well,
all right, see y'all later.
Let me know if Thursday works between now and then. That's going to be probably the next part of this, because we got shit ton more to go over. So we might I don't know, we might wrap soon. It depends on how long people want to go.
We don't we all know how I feel about the Federal Reserve. I'm pretty neutral. I don't like it, but I recognize the policy reasons it got established. All right, see you all later.
Be well. Thank you for coming on.
Always.
So the next one that came up was education and research. A major concern of Project 2025 is what it calls the, quote, woke propaganda in public schools. In response, it envisions a dramatic reduction of the federal government's role in education and the elevation of school choice and parents' rights. For Project 2025, education should be left to the states. To achieve that goal, it proposes eliminating the Department of Education and allowing states to opt out of federal programs or standards. Programs under the Individuals with Disabilities Act, Education Act, would be administered instead by the Department of Health and Human Services. The National Center for Education and Statistics would become part of the Census Bureau. The federal government, according to 2025, should be no more than a statistics-keeping organization when it comes to education. Federal enforcement of civil rights in schools would be significantly curtailed. Such responsibilities would be transferred to the Department of Justice, but the DOJ would be able to enforce the law only through litigation. The federal government would no longer investigate schools for signs of disparate impacts and disciplinary measures on the basis of race or ethnicity. Project 2025 explicitly rejects the idea of pursuit of racial parity in school discipline indicators, such as detentions, suspensions, and expulsions, over student safety. A federal fund worth $18 billion for low-income students, Title I of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965, would be allowed to expire, and those responsibilities would devolve to the states. Public funds for education would be available as school vouchers with no strings attached, even for parents sending their children to private or religious schools. Cuts would be made to funding for free school meals. The Head Start program that provides services to children of low-income families would be eliminated. For the project's backers, education is a private rather than a public good. Project 2025 criticizes any programs to forgive student loans. Project 2025 encourages the president to ensure that any research conducted with taxpayer dollars serves the national interest in a concrete way in line with conservative principles. For example, research in climatology should receive considerably less funding in line with 2025's views on climate change. So, basically, fuck poor people. That's what Trump has to say.
I was wondering, did Lou Rockwell write this section?
Like, I mean, I love the stuff about public schools as, yeah. I don't know what to make of, like, the, disparate impact stuff, but, okay, the school lunch, like, the whole thing about free school lunches always annoys me, because conservatives get really worked up about this, and I've had this argument with them. I'm like, okay, with the amount of money we're already paying in school taxes, like, they could afford to feed our kids 3 meals a day several times over. So the whole, we're being double charged for their shitty school food already, but for some reason conservatives fall for this shit over and over, and they get all up in arms at the idea of kids being given free lunches. Like, again, it's not free. We're already paying for it several times over with our tax dollars.
They don't want to pay for somebody else's kids, is what it is.
Yeah, no, because they're all about personal responsibility and pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, and they get really worked up over the idea of having to feed someone else's kids. Again, like my local school district, they just, I voted no on this, but of course it passed. Like, they bought an entire fucking golf course for tens of millions of dollars with taxpayer money. What do they need a fucking golf course for? Who knows? But the school district wanted it, and people voted in favor of it for some weird reason. Like, if they can afford to do that, they can afford to give the kids school lunches.
Yep.
If you look at again here, we just had a section. We had this section a couple sections back where they said, "Hey, we want the EPA to tell states what they can and can't do." Then they come back with the next section, hey, states' rights, states' rights, states' rights. And now they're back into, hey, we want states' rights, but we want to eliminate all of these functions, all of these protections, all of these things that have to do with eliminating the institutional racism, which they claim doesn't exist, you know?
Yeah.
Right.
And it's really kind of frustrating, because it's like they will go to court and stop student loan forgiveness, but they had no problem with the PPP loans and all the tax breaks and, you know, corporate credits that everybody gets. It's just like, let's get big business and anybody with money a break, but the people who are getting screwed over by our federal government, who's mismanaged the student loan system for so long, hey, let's fix that. Now they want to do that.
Yeah.
Okay, they created this problem. The student loan forgiveness, that, like, okay, my only issue with student loan forgiveness is that the forgiveness programs that are being promoted by the current establishment, they're not actual forgiveness. They're just bailouts being described as loan forgiveness. Like, they basically, okay, they would have printed even more money and given it out to these loan sharks, because we've reached a point where people can't afford to pay their loans anymore, so they were losing money on them. So that's my only issue, but I'm fully in favor of actual student loan cancellation, because these are people who, like, from the time they were very little, were basically groomed to believe that they absolutely had to take out massive loans. They were not taught finances or economics. They were not taught how predatory these loans were. And they were led to believe that if they took them out, one, it was the only way that they were ever going to get a halfway decent job, which is true. Most of the good jobs are paywalled behind, the need for a degree. And they were told, though, that if they took out these loans, they'd have no problem paying them off because they'd be able to get a decent job out of college. And then suddenly people end up with like 6-figure loan debt that they can't even begin to pay off because the rate at which it accrues interest they're not making nearly enough money to be able to pay to be able to keep up with it. So again,
private industry and private banking had done the things that the student loan program had done to people, they would have been in jail. As someone who's been in that system for at least 30 years, because I took out a student loan when I was 17 and I just had mine forgiven, because what they did was they would sell, loan service providers would sell those loans between each other, and every time they did, they recapitalized all the interest back into the principal. So now I borrow at the max $30,000, 20 years ago, and my balance is now over 100,000.
Yeah,
my balance, not balance and interest. That's my balance now.
You're not taught that that's what's going to happen with the loan, and this is by design. But
that's just it. It wasn't that way when we signed up for it. The laws changed as we were in the program. They just changed the management of it, and a lot of these student loan providers were getting sued by the federal government and getting shut down because of their practices. Right. So those if you went to derive by a certain period, in a certain period of time, you got your loans forgiven because the college worked with the student loan providers and screwed over with the students by telling them this is one thing and then actually getting in and changing the rules of the agreement. It's like I keep hearing, you took the loan out, pay it back. It's like, yeah, but they changed the rules. You can't, and if a bank had done that, you'd be suing them, but you can't sue the government.
Yeah,
right?
It's designed to make sure that the system is designed to turn you into basically a perpetual debt slave, because if you're in debt, you're more likely to take, any job you can get, regardless of how you're treated or how well you're paid, what sort of benefits you're given, because you have to be able to start making payments on this loan the moment you graduate. Otherwise, it's just going to spiral out of control.
Which is always an indicator for me is when I see
mechanisms of control that the system has.
When I see people just over focus on student loan debt to the point where they're suing the federal government for trying to fix what they're trying to do, but then they want to give breaks and everything else to all the corporations and everything else. That tells me about their mindset. They're not worried about fiscal responsibility and you shouldn't be doing this. It's about who is this helping?
Yeah.
If this is helping poor people, if this is helping people who are got in trouble by government policy, if these are people who are floundering and one little thing could help them, well, we can't do that. But let's not allow these corporations, massive corporations, to have any kind of issue, even though they're posting record revenue at a time when people are having a problem right now with inflation, but they're making money. So it's fine. The CrowdStrike, who had the massive problem this last week on Friday, which in my industry was involved in pretty heavily, but they if you go look at their financials, they were 60% over year from last year.
Yeah.
And they were doing layoffs and they were cutting back their staff, to gain that.
Way too many libertarians have this twisted idea that, that was a voluntary exchange, so therefore we shouldn't just let people out of there. No, okay. We do not have a free market. There is nothing about that type of agreement that was voluntary. When in a free market, if you wanted to be a doctor, you could go and apprentice for a doctor and be trained on the job. You wouldn't have to go into 6-figure debt to get the piece of paper from a state-sanctioned university saying that you learned what you needed to learn. So, yeah.
Yeah. And here's the sorry, go Hody. Say words.
Oh, it's okay. I was just going to say this is kind of selective outrage, because I do want to say this. I understand getting frustrated about the disparate outcomes situation. Now, the thing is if something adversely affects one group of people more than the other, you should say, is that the intent? In the case of like the drug war, for example, we know the intent was to suppress black people and people who tend to vote Democratic, right? Like, so we know there's a racist intent there. Schools, this is going to surprise you, but schools don't do this well. They don't accurately, get the right people in trouble. And so it's when they develop these standards that say, hey, let's make sure when you're doing expulsions that the same amount of black people and white people are getting expelled. This is, and here's the thing, it's not that like black people are worse, it's just depending on the district, they may be coming from a different situation that makes it so that it's necessary that they receive certain, I don't want to say, I don't like the schools administering punishments no matter what, but I don't like the idea that suddenly like somebody's above the law because of their color of skin, black, white, whatever. Asians have been particularly aggrieved by many of these disparate outcome situations. I have a friend in the school system who is, he's a teacher. He's been for a very long time. He tried to get his kids to stop saying the N-word in class. But the school is just having a real problem because who desperately says the N-word more than the others? Well, they say, you can bust somebody for saying the N-word, just make sure you also bust somebody else for something else. So he gets caught in this situation. This actually led to his termination because he refused to do it. But they're like, if you really want to stop it, then you have to bust somebody else for some other reason. And this is what school systems suck, right? So you're upset about this. These things are not hard to find. It is something the schools suck at, they're bad at. And I understand why people don't want to examine disparate outcomes. At the same time, this is where the outrage becomes selective. You're mad about that, right? We're upset about that. At the same time, in my current school district, there is, I probably haven't shared this story on this show before, but there was, we bullied to death a black boy and I think it was a Filipino girl, and there were racist taunts thrown at these people constantly, and the school did nothing about it. There was actually an investigation before this little girl committed suicide because of her bullying at school. And as a result, now you'd think, oh, the school got told on, so they must have stopped. They increased the bullying against her because they ratted the feds on her and people had to investigate. And there was this big old report that was like, yeah, this girl endures racist bullying every day. So we still need to examine racism. We still need to examine bullying and problematic behavior. The school just does it poorly. Project 2025, instead of wanting to fix the problem as it currently exists, simply wants to hide the problem because the schools don't do a good enough job investigating it. This is actually protecting the schools. Mm-hmm. This is actually protecting them, because now all of a sudden they just say like, oh, I don't have to examine these biases anymore. I don't have to examine this racist stuff anymore. I can just simply say whatever it is, we just keep business as usual over here, guys. That's what we're doing. And it's really unfortunate that this is going to sucker in a lot of people who have that selective outrage that aren't very good at being consistent, that will say, I care about racism when it's against white people or Asian people, but if it's against black people and Mexicans, maybe looking the other way for the racism against them is okay.
Yep.
Never okay.
And
go.
And one thing you're seeing too is that it's not just in the schools where they want to focus on this thing. It's in the military. It's in any government institutions, and get rid of DEI, get rid of any recognition or acknowledgement that there may be institutional racism out there.
Right.
And we all know that there is, because the drug war is a perfect example of that. And it's not just there. I think being aware of what's going on and having the statistical information in order to say, okay, we see this disparity, let's examine why it's happening and see if there's a cause here, or if it's just, randomness of life could be attributing to this. But if you don't track it at all, if you don't acknowledge it at all, it's just going to fester and continue.
Right. Well,
no, that's too woke. Like, isn't there even a part about prosecuting entities that implement DEI by, like, under the idea that it's like a violation of equal protection or something?
There's something like that, I think, later on. We'll probably... this is probably going to be like a 2-hour stream, and then we'll do it, like, we're about 1.5 hours in. we'll probably do another one on Thursday. But like, so there will be plenty of time to go over all the rest of the minutia, and like quote more heavily from the source document as well. But like, 3 responses. First off, just to respond to the DEI thing, since that came up, anybody who believes DEI is a government thing is fucking stupid. Because yes, there is an agenda, 2030 driven kind of UN kind of like push for that because it's part of the SDGs, and I'm not going to say it's not. But the primary driving factor behind DEI is corporations hiring DEI officers because they say that it improves their profit margins to have more customers in those bases. It's about profit, you cunts.
Yep.
So, fucking, that is there. Second thing is, speaking of profit, these motherfuckers spent so much time over the past, several years saying that they hate corporations, and they hate the corporation's incestuous relationship with the government and shit like that, and brought to you by Pfizer, and we hate corporations now, isn't that so cool? We're against the military-industrial complex, allegedly. The conservatives are all on board, and they're saying Trump is gonna reverse Biden's disastrous policies. It's like, fuck you, because this is how you operate now. You're just gonna cuck to the corporations. And so, when it comes down to it, the dirty truth about it, the end run of their policies is this sort of thing. So the general vibe that I want to convey, the thing that I want to get out there is, when it comes down to these lunch policies are an exact depiction of the kind of culture that these people want. The poor, they get the shaft. And all these corporations they've spent years pretending to hate, now those corporations get a pass. And they also get a pass for these sorts of things because, let's be super fucking clear, poor kids, those kids that need the free lunch programs, those kids will get involved in crime the less well they are taken care of. Those kids will be put into the system the less well they're taken care of. So all of these things that say, fuck them hoe-ass kids, basically, are going to increase the criminal population. So you want to say you're preventing migrants from entering the country and starting to add questions like that to the census because you don't want criminals. But no, you actually just want to increase the stock of homegrown criminals, and at the same time make them, some of the minorities involved here, feel much worse about their situation because, guess what? They are getting expelled disproportionately and shit. They are getting disproportionately targeted by these institutions, and they are disproportionately poor. So you're taking those people's money even more, or you're telling them to starve, and at the same time, you're telling these people that it's okay to discriminate against them, and you won't investigate that on a federal level anymore. You're removing protections when those people might be the subject of discrimination. That's evil. And it's also pro-corporate. So these people claiming that they don't like the corporations, and the corporations are controlling the food supply and the media, and the corporations are controlling big pharma and the military, and the corporations, we're anti-corporation Republicans now, allegedly. No, you're not. And we have proof right here, because you want to enrich the corporations, and you want to give the corporations all the ability to control their profit margins, increasing their ability to control significant portions of the economy. And while you do that, you want to punish the people who cannot afford to buy those corporations' products, because those people need to eat, and their children. And if you're truly Christians, and if you truly support a Christian message, you should not have a problem feeding fucking kids!
Yeah, but then they'll just be lazy and dependent on the system. I think a lot of people actually do want to, they actually do want to be anti-corporation, but one, they're focused on the wrong things, okay? It's like they're so close to getting it, but they fail to look at the big picture. They fail to look at things like systemic coercion, or why, or look at the reasons why people are poor. Like, it's frustrating because, again, like it's like you're on the right track there, but so close.
I remember this Bible verse will always stick with me. When Jesus, in response to the children being ushered away from him, said, "Fuck them hoe-ass kids, they're communists and race traitors. Let's fucking fuck them all out of their food, take it out of their mouths if they didn't, like, directly pay for it." Shut the fuck up, you Christian nationalist cunts.
Look, I've said this before, but if Jesus actually came back, I feel like he'd just be crucified again by the majority of so-called Christians.
Yes.
Again, yeah.
I'm assuming Hody has something to say to that.
No, I just fully agree. It is
Christians, if most Christians were like Christian anarchists, like I wouldn't have any problem.
It's sad because there's an illustrious tradition of Christian anarchy that goes back to Jesus that is absolutely fantastic and beautiful and wonderful. But when you start to spread and the state says, okay, well, we can't stop their spread because their culture, everything they're doing is too amazing. They're feeding people. They care about people. They love people. Everybody loves them, which is actually really important as well. Like, a lot of those Christian doctrines are talking about how to be well loved among your enemies, and it's funny because Christians now are just like, what, are we trying to appeal to them? Well, yeah. Do you not want... Why is this a contest to be as unlikable as possible? I understand. So, like, right now, Christianity is in a rocky place there, but Christianity has been through worse places before. I hate to even say that, but we have been. And ultimately, the values will win out. The revisionists, times, they're on borrowed time. They're not going to make it last for much longer.
Well, and something else I can say to that particular subject is, hey, conservatives, if you don't want to pay for somebody else's meals and housing, if you don't want that, maybe your first steps shouldn't be creating the circumstances which have universally increased criminality and forced people into situations where they either steal or can't fucking live, because those people who are criminals might be put into a situation where you are feeding and housing them, motherfuckers.
So that's why I just encourage people, okay, learn economics, learn about how the monetary system works, focus on that as the primary cause of all these other problems you're complaining about, because just about every problem in society can, in one way or another, be traced back to the monetary system. Okay, learn how that works, and I guarantee your pet issue that you're so pissed about will be traced back to the monetary system. Okay, focus on the actual cause of all these problems.
We protect the kids. We'll protect the kids by demonizing LGBT people and, fucking migrants and shit. Protect the kids. But when they need to live, when they need basic fucking shit to not die, then's when you pull the plug, you piece of shit. Sorry.
Well, because it was never about protecting kids. Look, statists love to use children as an excuse to advance their agenda. Oh, this is to protect the children, and that's why we have to spy on you 24/7 and moderate what you can and can't see on the internet.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Show your ID to visit certain websites. That's for your freedom and for your children. It's not because we want the ability to control certain information. It's not because we've demonstrated fascism and so many other aspects of this fucking shit. This isn't a continuation of a theme. No, don't look behind the curtain. Don't see that dude. Fucking.
Yeah, they don't want to control the libraries or anything for a nefarious reason, right? They don't want to, limit access to specific information.
Looking at porn.
Yeah, like, yo.
I mean, not actual, but they think what they're calling porn, which is really just books about, like, puberty or something.
Yo, like, so, okay, and here's the other, like, segment to that. because like I have literally had to over the last year on multiple occasions defend the concept of fucking libraries to these people, or to other people, because when it comes down to it, they've been demonizing libraries. It's like like we're really just moving back to the book burning days. That's like fucking book communism, and we have to fight the Reds over there. Fucking Jesus
Communism.
Christ, I fucking hate these people so much. Anyway,
As if communities can't operate libraries.
yeah, it's
Look. I mean, I want the state gone. So yeah, the state wouldn't be running libraries, but I think communities could figure something out. I think they could figure out how to share books.
yeah,
And the thing is too is you notice what they go after first, right? It's like, let's get rid of all of these things that help, the downtrodden and poor people. That's what we want to focus on getting rid of first. It's not like, let's get rid of them, dismantle the state in a way that takes care of all these other issues, and then we'll get to those other things once we have something in place to take over for it, or to
Right.
continue making sure we're helping those people, poor people. We just fuck them and then move on to the next thing, which never happens. You'll
Yeah.
never see that in their plans to actually go after those people inside of the government. So it's just it's telling for what they really care about, and what
Right.
their real problems are.
If you're angrier about food stamps than you are about corporate subsidies, you've lost the plot.
and one other thing. Hey, one other thing. Reminder: 92% of fucking student loans are being paid to enrich the fucking Department of Education. Those are the people who currently hold 92% of student loans. So if you say you don't want those forgiven, you're saying you want to fund the Federal Department of Education. You stupid
Yep.
cuck.
Yep.
This part really fucks with me. Sorry guys, I'm screaming
Yeah.
a lot.
People don't understand what they're actually against. They don't understand who their enemies are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just, when it comes down to certain core issues like how you take care of the kids and the poor and the potentially disenfranchised, and like schools in general, like as a poor who went to a public school, it somehow bothers me. And I'm not even like black or like Hispanic. I didn't like go by any LGBT thing in school. It's worse for those people. So it's like I'm already in a better position than some of these other people, and it already sucked for me. And they want to make it worse for people like me, which means they want to make it much worse for people like that. It's like, fuck you. You're not helping anybody. You're encouraging kids to walk away from any policy you promote. Fuck you.
Recognizing privilege.
Yeah, it's the same bullshit. The same reason that conservatism became the culture that spurred the counterculture before. They wanted to pretend to be the intellectual dark web and say that right-wingers are the new punk or whatever. Shut the fuck up. Jesus.
It's
Fuck.
anti-intellectualism is what it is, and that's the frustrating part too. And I saw a whole diatribe on this. I think it might have been Charlie Kirk or somebody like that, but they were trying to explain why there is no institutional racism. It says what it is that there's problems with the cultures, right? So the specific cultures that these people are in is what's keeping them back and holding them back, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm like, okay, let's just take that. Then they just stop. They don't take that further and say, okay, why is their culture different? Why, let's say it's an issue with the black community is having a lot more troubles than the white community is. Well, it's their culture. Well, why is their culture the way it is? Is it A, because it's inherently part of their DNA? Oh, no, it can't be that because they don't want to admit to that. So then it must be the way that their society was treated and taken care of while they were, for the past 150 years, and how the government, screwed with them over and over and over and over again. He said, well, yeah, that's probably part of it. I'm like, great, you just described institutional racism, but you're trying to couch it into this whole culture thing so that you can take yourself off of the responsibility to resolve the issue and just say, hey, they need to figure it out. It's their problem. We're going to still screw them over and over and over again because that's what we do. But we're going to pretend like it's their problem and they need to fix it.
Yep. My bootstraps. Go, Hody.
You gotta separate yourself from allies where you think you have a single issue in common, but you actually don't. One of the ways that we saw this manifest was all the Russian Today, all the pro-Putin people that were just like, yeah, we gotta stop funding Ukraine. We do. The government does need to get out of wars, but there's a huge difference between somebody who says, hey, I don't want the government logged into a forever war versus I care about the people of Ukraine and I want to be able to promote an idea that will be better than a government solution. This is so critical to winning the future, because if we just deny problems, and unfortunately libertarians got into the habit of doing this with things like climate change, that because they couldn't fathom a free market way to solve the problem, they just pretended it wasn't a problem, and therefore we lost the battle on that one. It's why we're currently losing the battle on the whole Ukraine thing, because instead of being loving, awesome, great people who are like, I care about these people, I want them, we got in bed with just people that love Vladimir Putin, people that want him to take over Ukraine, people who say put down Ukrainians like a dead dog or like a rabid dog, and we just said, yeah, let's give them speaking positions at our rallies. Yeah, this guy who's literally on Russia Today's payroll, oh yeah, let's make sure that he's over there against like the anti-war machine. It's not anti-war machine, he's pro-war machine. He's just pro the other side of the war machine. And like don't be an idiot, right? Get in bed with loving people that promote policies in a very compassionate, understandable way. As soon as you fail to do that, you deserve to lose. I mean, you're gonna lose, and you're gonna deserve to lose, because I don't want hateful people taking over just because I think they represent me on one issue. It's not going to work out the way you think it will.
Right. In all fairness, okay, the actual pro-Putin crowd is they're fairly few and far between. However, those of us who are opposed
Some
to
got speaking roles at a libertarian rally.
Those of us who are opposed to using the Ukrainian people as cannon fodder for a U.S. proxy war tend to get lumped in with the pro-Putin crowd. We're all pretty used to being called Putin supporters.
But you got to understand, you've got the person who's in charge, who's basically running the Ron Paul Institute, used to run a website called Putin Today.
Daily Putin.
It was dedicated, the Daily Putin,
Yeah.
that was what it was. And it's like, at some point you have to recognize this, we're now, the Justice Department is suing a bunch of people because the RT was actually working with the Russian government to put out all these bots inside of social media to spread this information, and they're constantly doing that sort of thing. And the problem is that a lot of people in the libertarian circle are very much favor of they see conspiracy everywhere, so they gravitate to a lot of these messaging, right?
Okay, it's not a conspiracy theory that the U.S. Uses Ukraine as a proxy state, though, and it's not a conspiracy theory that, or rather, you're not.
It's also irrelevant.
If you're opposed to NATO expansion.
Again, it's NATO. You could be opposed to NATO expansion, but it's not your decision to make, is it? I mean, NATO isn't an organization that either has people join or not join. Right?
I mean,
it's not like
an alliance of criminal gangs, so. Yeah, there's nothing libertarian.
Yeah, I don't see NATO invading their neighbors like Russia did. I mean, there's a reason NATO exists, and that's because Russia has been trying to expand its borders for decades.
Well, NATO doesn't need to
stopping.
invade their neighbors. They're parts of the war machine that the U.S. has been using to invade everywhere, and multiple other NATO-like affiliated countries for like as long as NATO has existed. Like, NATO started out with Nazis for a reason. But like, we'll talk about Ukraine at some point. I'm sure that there's plenty that we could say about that particular issue. But I will say,
the point is just be loving, right? Like, there's the loving people and then there's the hateful people. And Rose, like, my point here is that the loving people managed to find all of the hateful people and host a rally with them. And then we're like, how come people can't tell the difference between me and them? You hosted a rally with them, right? Like,
and we're like, two people who showed up with Russian flags that
I'm talking about the speakers.
Jackson Hinkle, Jimmy Dore.
7 of them were on Russia
Ritter.
Today's payroll, and like Like,
Yeah.
I mean, it was absurd.
Yeah,
I mean,
and-
it was absurd.
And like, you know, fucking so many people who were affiliated with that pro-tanky like vibe. And then it's not even just that. It's like Lori Price of LegitGov being the person behind much of Rechtenwald's messaging. She's like a Putin stan. She considers him a liberator of many Ukrainian regions and completely endorses him and Trump. So that's, and she was speaking in a Mises like ordained call the other day. So like there's like plenty of problems that don't just like encompass that.
Yes, there are people who, for one reason or rather, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Sure, I'm sure the Russian government thinks that there is benefit in pushing certain narratives. I won't deny that, but yeah, this idea that there's like some mass infiltration of Putin supporters working for the Russian government, and that anyone who opposes the U.S. empire must be, either inadvertently supporting Putin or on Putin's payroll is,
Yeah, like I was called a Russian shill so much.
Yeah.
Because I was like saying, yeah, you know, I oppose this funding and I oppose these sorts of mentalities and I oppose this, like, the idea that these massive racists that run a significant portion of their military, who are like oftentimes directly affiliated with Nazi organizations that trace back like 80 years, those people are probably not the people who we should be backing. But like at the same time, I don't support Russia either because they're also sort of like they operate the same time, like the same kind of Nazi-ish mentalities that I would criticize Ukraine for. Like, for instance, Putin criminalizing, you know, LGBT people as an extremist.
It's illegal to be gay in Russia, yes.
Yeah.
Of course, no, they're a criminal gang just like any other.
Yeah.
But
All
I
the
guess my
same.
point, actual, genuine Russian state supporters are relatively rare. Like, I mean, I've been anti-war long enough to have been called a Saddam Hussein supporter, or, you know, an Al-Qaeda supporter, or, okay, then it was, an Assad supporter. It's, the whole Russian or Putin supporter shit is just, the latest iteration of that bullshit.
I feel like you guys think you might disagree with my point. My point is I agree with your point.
Oh,
this
no,
is why it's so important to like differentiate ourselves. Is like, to bring it back to Project 2025, you may be like, hey, end the Fed? That's awesome.
Exactly.
You want to end the Fed because you hate poor people? Not awesome.
Yeah.
And the thing is, if that accusation is going to come up and you know it is, then instead of just being like, oh, there's nothing I can do about the accusations, sure there is.
Yeah.
Like, you know, if
Be
you're
vocal.
a flea-infested dog, get rid of your fleas. You know, like these are the fleas. The dog's not the problem. The fleas are the problem. And so don't get in bed with these hateful people. Insist that they create those degrees of separation. And if you are like, oh, there's nothing I can do, it's just, then of course people are going to lump you in as being the same. When we look at U.S. policy, every pretend good thing they've done has ended up being the bad people behind the scenes that won the thing, regardless of the good intentions for all the people that wanted to be involved.
And like also like the other here's the thing, I did agree with you. I do agree because like the whole like the rally thing was fundamentally flawed. So was the next rally thing, Humanity for Peace. So was another sister rally with Diane Sare that had a lot of the same kinds of backers and speakers. So have a lot of other rallies been. And so, like, libertarians need to do a whole lot better with building coalitions with actual libertarian, like, supported organizations instead of just taking a side and saying, no more money to Ukraine. Sure, okay, but definitely don't also say we're going to host a bunch of people who say that the Russian government deserves all the support that it can get. Like, you know, fucking Putin's...
I think it's a little different when you co-host and you don't have as much direct control over who speaks there. Because, again, like, I'm all for building anti-war coalitions, but problem with partnering with certain, other organizations is you don't necessarily have control over who shows up.
Well, right, but that's sort of part of the point, is you can choose not to show up. You can rescind your involvement if they don't meet certain specifications and say...
Okay, but then that's so easy to sabotage, because all you have to do, like, you have to have one infiltrator who tries to get, a certain person or a couple particular people to show up, and then then you're somehow obligated to back out. Like, it's so easy to sabotage anti-war coalitions that way.
Okay, but
The problem with that rally was that it wasn't an infiltration. It wasn't an infiltration. They reached out to these people.
yes,
They made that agreement. That's what Angela did. She worked with them because she's in that camp.
She worked with the People's Party, and then, she didn't disinvite Scott Ritter herself on principle. Like,
She fought hard for him to stay. Hard.
yep.
Like, at that point, though, like, because at that point I didn't think anything of it either, because we were so used to hearing, oh, this person is so terrible because such and such. And we were so used to hearing accusations that turned out to be complete bullshit that we had all just stopped listening. Like, I legitimately did not care what the people who were opposed to it had to say at that point either. So, yeah, it's also there is an issue with people crying wolf.
Okay, but there's also
Right, but that's also an excuse too.
Yeah.
It's really not. Like, when you constantly hear, oh, so-and-so is a fascist, so-and-so is a Putin supporter, like, you stop listening.
I've been a libertarian for over 30 years. I've been called all kinds of things, but I still examine every single thing that comes through because I know that sometimes those things are true. Sometimes those things are right. Like, I spent years defending the newsletters from Ron Paul. I spent several years defending them and realized to the point where I can't defend them anymore. I mean, they were wrong and they were bad. So,
Hey, before we get into it, guys, can I just I have to dip, so can I just say, bye? It was fun.
Yep.
Appreciate it, guys. I gotta go to work in the morning. I gotta get ready.
yeah,
Get my stuff out.
and we'll be going over the next actual segment of Project 2025 when we return on Thursday, because like we're pretty far in the weeds and we'll probably be wrapping close to 2 hours anyway. So, thank you for showing up. You will not miss anything in the actual 2025 regard.
I got you. It was a pleasure being here. Y'all have a good night.
Be well.
Man.
But yeah, like I'm with Hody and Dennis here, because like I'm just gonna say, like, I can understand not appreciating the like dishonest negative feedback. I've gotten a shit ton of it myself. You've seen it personally. But I'm still willing to listen to other sides and listen to potential like new evidence and information, because that's what people should do. And in a party of principle, they're doubly obligated to do that. They should be like doubly interested in maintaining that principle. Otherwise, they're not what that is.
it's so
Sure.
easy to
I
get
guess,
caught
like,
up.
It's just it's way too easy to okay. All in all, I support the I supported the anti-war rally. I support having more of them. I think that in general they were a good thing, even if some mistakes were made. Perhaps there were one or two speakers who shouldn't have been invited, and moving forward should not be invited in the future. Sure, yes, but I'm not gonna have that be like the one thing I focus on. Oh, it's a complete failure because they didn't disinvite this one person. I'm sorry, I just think that's stupid.
Well, it's not one person. That isn't what Hody said.
I think when you're at a point where you've got like 50% of your people who've like cheered on Russia for invading a country, that there's a point where you go, okay, we're at 50%, that something's wrong here, right? And to be fair to Angela as much as I can, while she did stick up for the pedophile, it does appear that most of the people that were invited that were on the Russia Today payroll, outside of like the couple of the Ron Paul Institute people, outside of those, like most of them did appear to be invites from the other side. But this is the point again. When you coalition with somebody, you had the option of like thousands of distinguished people that are opposed to the war, that also care deeply about the freedom of Ukrainian people. And so when you've invited by choice, yes, the pedophile and a couple Russia Today people, and then they invite a bunch of Russia Today people, and then half of them, maybe even over half of them, I mean, like 13 of them or whatever, had like blatant like, go Putin, I support him, this invasion has to happen, yay Ukraine death, right? Like when you get to that point, that's when, like Jeremy says, you back off and you go, okay, I don't want to be associated with that. So like, I do want to be associated with people who want to end the Fed, but they want to do so because they love the poor. They care about their economic conditions. As soon as I get into bed with the other people, then all of a sudden you just paint us all with a broad brush, right? Oh, these are, you know, and this was the thing that Christians from the very inception of the church had to be wary of. It wasn't, they didn't put the task on others to differentiate. They put that task on themselves. They said, we're going to be the ones, hey, there are a bunch of people that are trying to use Christ's name in vain, right? A bunch of these early churches, Simon Magus, they're listed in Acts, right? Like a bunch of phony churches that just want your money, that are just trying to take advantage of you, that hate the Roman Empire, people that want, or hate, of course, they hate the Roman Empire, that hate Romans, that hate Gentiles, that hate Jews. And they're like, how are we going to distinguish ourselves? It's not by blaming them. It's by looking inside. It's by showing them that we're not with them. And you got to do that by your actions. And when you when you pal around with people like that make you look bad, it's not on them anymore. Like, we are aware that people paint with broad brushes. When you're hosting a rally, you're making it broad. You're talking to a broad coalition. You're asking people for broadness. These aren't specifics. We're not reading an individual book. You know, this is a broad coalition. So of course, if we're speaking in generalities, we're going to be spoken of in generalities. And if that generality tends to be that like half of the people you invite are like, go Putin, yay death to Ukraine, yeah, let's put them down like rabid dogs. And then of course, it's sad that Ritter wasn't the only pedo sex pest involved, and then throw in a couple of those, then at that point, it's irresponsible not to back out. I agree that the point of it is good. The execution was beyond terrible, and unfortunately, so tarnished the image of the anti-war rally that it's hard to even talk about it to a common person because they see it as pro-Putin.
Right. And I think that's unfair, to be honest. Like, for example, okay, there are some people who want to end the Fed perhaps for the wrong reasons. There are people out there who think the whole thing is some Jewish plot. And funnily enough, I'm actually seeing this this narrative pushed more often. Like, I've seen comments on social media with like those like talk about the Federal Reserve with 3 parentheses around it. I'm like, okay, that's such a blatant psyop to tie anti-Fed sentiments to anti-Jewish conspiracy theories. However, like, suppose a libertarian group wanted to hold an anti-Fed rally, and then they arranged to have a bunch of other anti-Fed groups show up, and then some of them turned out to perhaps want to end the Fed for all the wrong reasons. Like, is it on them now to back out just because some undesirable people are going to show up? Like, I don't know.
If you can't kick them out, I say yes. I would absolutely, if half of them expressed anti-Jewish sentiment, yeah, and then there were a couple of pedophiles as well, 100% I would back.
Yeah, like one of them is Nick Fuentes.
Right.
It's so easy to just completely derail entire movements that way, though. All you have to do is ensure that a couple wrong thinkers are scheduled to show up, and now no one else can show up, or they're going to be.
There's wrong thinking and there's anti-Judaism, and my point is that you had thousands of people who are pro-Ukraine freedom, pro-Ukrainians. They love the people. They don't want them to die. And you had those options there. And as well as them being anti-war, you had thousands of such individuals. So when you select these people on Russia Today, and again, you didn't do it, Rose, and apparently Angela only selected a few, like 3 of the really bad ones. But like, when this selection process happens like that, you need to be able to look at this with open eyes. I mean, I think it's fair. I mean, even Angela was like, yeah, this was a big learning experience for us, right? Like, mistakes were definitely made, and it shifted the needle away from anti-war. Like that, I am having trouble drawing a positive from that.
It derailed it more. I think it derailed the movement more than if they had backed out on principle, right? That I think it's like, let's do this states' rights thing and make sure we get rid, institute the federalism and et cetera, and we're going to coordinate that effort with David Duke and these people over here on this side, and that's how we're going to do it. You end up just derailing the whole thing because now it's associating your beliefs and principles with a bad motive, a bad narrative, and people who are misusing this. So
I think it's
you tie it together, and it gets dismissed out of hand.
The state
when-
was going to find a way to portray any sort of anti-war rally, no matter, like, it doesn't matter.
make
It
them look
wasn't the
bad.
or actually
state.
do
They
things.
made themselves look bad.
The
It,
state
it
was
wasn't the state doing it.
as pro-Putin to begin with, and yeah, the loser brigade focusing on, oh, they didn't disinvite these people. Okay, I'm sorry. No.
I mean, it's
Okay.
not the loser brigade in this call, is it?
No, but sorry, I'm not going to condemn the Rage Against the War Machine rallies.
It's up to you. But I am saying it's valid concerns that have been brought. I don't think it's unfair the way Hody said anything.
I mean, you want to complain about the current LNC, I can do that all day, but there are fair criticisms and there are unfair criticisms.
Sure, and I've tried to keep my criticisms fair. I hope you don't think I'm trying to be unfair.
No.
I don't like pedophiles and I don't like Putin states.
Fair, I just disagree.
Rose, here's my thing for you. I believe that you are being taken advantage of by people you are millions of times better than. Because I think if you were asked to select an anti-war rally, you would have done an incredible job picking speakers for it.
I would have tried, but I'm sure people would have fallen through the cracks with me too. Like, you only do just so much background knowledge or background research on.
I believe that if you found that a pedophile got invited, you would disinvite them. And I believe that if you found all of a sudden the research that somebody was like jacking off to Putin killing Ukrainians, you would have disinvited them. I believe you would have.
But if I had co-organized this with someone else, though, and they invited those people, I didn't have any real direct control. Like,
Well,
and
then
suddenly it's need to just.
You have direct control by saying get rid of them or we're done.
Right. I believe you would have done the right thing here, Rose. Like, this is my point. I believe that you would have done I think you are defending a position you would not have defended if you were in that situation.
And, like, just to be clear, the basic research on Ritter, for instance, was a Wikipedia article. This was well discussed for over a decade. So,
Yeah, everybody knew who Scott Ritter was.
so anyway, we'll call this one for getting kind of. Well, at some point we'll do sort of an autopsy stream on the Ukraine situation in general, and we'll get a whole lot of stuff like from both sides, because like Dennis and I are going to disagree in significant ways on the Ukraine issue. If Archie wanted to show up, Archie definitely disagrees. I still owe Archie a response to some like stuff in a thread a while back. But like generally speaking, like I am still against the funding of the Ukrainian government. I think they're very corrupt, and I think that it's basically a proxy state and a way for the West to test new forms of government, not the least of which is the AI government that the Ukrainian government has literally said they want to implement.
Yeah, don't we like these like high tech? Yeah, we're testing out various new technologies and using Ukraine as our testing grounds.
Yes. Yeah, and it's exactly that. Like every new war theater is a new opportunity to test new ways to off people, and that's exactly what's happening in Ukraine. It's exactly what happened in Afghanistan and all these like more desert-oriented countries. Is you get new biomes to test your gear in and make sure that they can like withstand certain temperatures, climates, dust levels, ice levels, various things like that, and then you come back with equipment that is, just as a coincidence, much better for domestic control. So, it's not like this enriched the military-industrial complex. It's not like this particular thing, like kept things like Boeing, BAE, Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin, and all this other shit, like enriched, while the COVID shit like basically shut down everything else. It's not like that was an obvious and transparent agenda to keep these people in power. And to keep the military industrialists afloat. It's not like that's the case. But if it were, then they wouldn't need to do anything different. So I definitely, I think if we did do a Ukraine-specific stream, Dennis and I would probably be at loggerheads for a part of it, if not most of it. I don't know. But
I've
like...
got to review a bunch of stuff, but yeah. I know we've been talking about doing one of those for a while because still ongoing and it's still relevant.
Yeah, and like I'll just say, I just think because I've got my anti-Nazi agenda, it's always interesting that Ukraine and the U.S. have been some of the most consistent nations voting against a Russian like proclamation to denounce Nazism for like over a decade now. It's been a long
it's not
time.
like we're directly funding neo-Nazi militias when they benefit us,
Yeah,
is it?
no, there was no funding to the Azov Battalion, C-14, or a significant amount.
What
to
is
the others.
that? There was like an article about like the history behind the swastika and why certain militias are using it. And they're trying to act like it's they're totally not Nazis, you guys. It's just a historical symbol that they use.
Pagan, fucking fuck you. Yeah. Either way, let's wrap for today. People can plug where they can be found, and we can get into more of the actual Project 2025 on the next stream. Start with Dennis, I guess.
Reinhold at you can get me on Twitter at or X. I guess I shouldn't be dead naming. And just at Reinhold, and also Reinhold on Facebook, and Reinhold.org for websites.
Yeah.
And Chris Spangle Show is coming back to putting out more episodes here in the next few weeks, so you can get me on there as well as a co-host of that show.
Cool. Hody.
Please, if you are at all interested in matters of faith, I love that you guys did the heavy lifting for faith for me this time. I didn't even have to make the points. It comes off as very appreciated. But I'm with the Love First Christians. We're doing Bible studies and topical studies. We welcome non-believers, actually make a very coordinated effort to include non-believers in our efforts. We find that our lives are enriched by including them as part of our culture. I want to walk the talk. I told you here that a Christian culture means hanging out with non-Christian people, and that's a big reason why I do what I do. I love it, and we'd love to have you again. That's the Love First Christians. My name is Hody Johns. You can always ask me for an invite. I think this Love First Christians invite gets put in plenty of the show notes, so you can probably find a non-expiring invitation to that as well. Again, we'd love to have you participate from whatever walk of life you're on. As far as like wrapping thoughts,
yeah, because we're rapping, Kareem.
Rapping. You're supposed to be rapping.
Yeah. Well, Kareem, you got to come like closer to the beginning. We planned this like a day in advance.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what time it would be. That's it.
Well,
right.
I had 8 on my calendar for some reason, so I'm like, oh, okay.
Oh, because it frequently is at 8, but actually, it only got rescheduled like yesterday because Bryce had an XCOM meeting to attend. So
Yeah, so I was like, okay, well, probably like 8:30. I'll pop in at 9.
Well, at 10:11, I sent a message, and it said you saw that message in the chat. That 6 PET might be doable for everyone. And so everybody said that worked. It said you saw that, so I figured I didn't need to message you specifically. So, But yeah, I mean, we've been going for a while, but even if it was 8 p.m. Eastern, we'd be pretty much wrapping now anyway. So, I don't know.
Is it I haven't seen that chat, so I don't know anything about it. So.
Oh, okay.
This was kind of a surprise to me.
Well, so normally I send this to various chats. There are some on Twitter, some on Facebook, for anarchist unity of various sorts.
That's why I'm not in them.
Did Kevin join?
well, if you'd become an anarchist, then you'd be in it.
Yeah.
That's called incentive, kids.
But
be an anarchist.
But
then you can the based people.
But like, if you wanted to start a chat on Facebook, I'd definitely be active there too. Like, if there's some people you know over there.
Yeah, I'll be the anarcho-minarchist. How about that?
That actually is like bookchin.
Well, so basically, Kareem, we'll be doing another one on Thursday at around the same time. That seems to work for people, I think.
I think Thursday would be better.
Cool. All right. Well. The cat is back.
Did Kevin show up tonight?
What?
Did Kevin show up?
Yeah, he was here in the beginning.
Did you ask him what he was today?
He just said so. Hody, you were going to give wrapping thoughts?
Yeah, he's an anchor.
Yeah. Just some wrapping thoughts. if anybody remembers the Green New Deal, and it's kind of very similar, right? Like proposed by people, tossed it out there. Now that was like a single page, and remember they had it up for like 30 minutes before they took it down because of the backlash. And same thing, like very like pie in the sky, like banning flight for all people that aren't politicians, like ridiculous, stupid, probably wouldn't happen things.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want people to vote out of fear. Now here's the issue, and a lot of people who say that, they're like, listen, I'm a convicted pedo, but don't act out of fear and let me babysit your kids.
Mm-hmm.
That's obviously, that is showing a lack of discernment.
Right.
At the same time, there is also the acting out of fear where you're acting out of hypothetical situations and you're just terrified of what the future is going to bring. Listen, it's not really acting out of fear to be like, Donald Trump could do these things. He could. That's the reason the project is there. Joe Biden could do the exact same for the left. Terrifying thought, right? Like, so that is indeed like an appropriate time to be like, I am not going to. That I say don't act out of fear because we don't know what's going to happen. And the truth is that the worst predictions for every president hasn't come true, but usually something even worse happens that nobody predicted. Did anybody predict that Joe Biden was going to give all monopoly power to the drug companies in the Inflation Reduction Act? I didn't see one single prediction of that happening, right? Like unlimited monopoly power literally uses the word monopoly like a bunch of times to describe these new powers these drug companies get, not just over drugs, but all biological ingestibles that have been made and will be made going forward. Like, nobody predicted how bad that was going to be. People predicted a lot of awful things out of Trump, that people were going to be, the handmaiden's tale, right? That all of a sudden women weren't going to have the right to speak up or be in public anymore or exist anymore. Well, none of that ended up being real. What did end up being real was he inspired people to contest his election results, definitely made people think less and less about, or more and more about tyranny, less and less about monarchy. Even at the RNC, the dude's over here kissing, like talking about how great the leaders of China are and everything because all the people respect them so much. And I'm sure that's just like a market value kind of thing, right, Mr. Donald Trump, that they just love their leadership so much that that's why they stand at attention, right? Like people don't predict the worst parts of every president. A lot of, do you remember Obama's America, Dinesh D'Souza? None of that crap came true. What did come true? 8 new wars and a redefinition for what counts as a war, right? So that, like, the worst things don't get predicted about these presidents. So on one hand, don't let fear control you. On the other hand, have an examination that you can say, like, yeah, but the fact that these things can happen or something that I can't even fathom yet can happen should make me reject the duopoly, should make me reject statism, should make me say I'm not going to support this anymore. This is a cultural shift that we're seeing right now, that we've seen in the right for a while now. Trump denounced Project 2025 at his rally the other day. He called it like, he did the thing where the writers do, where it's like you dismiss it so bad that you get the name wrong on purpose. Like you're like, they're talking about this Project 25 and it's got the craziest extremism, whatever. But here's the thing. Look at the reaction of the audience. Notice how this was like a chilly, deadly silence when he actually condemned it from his audience. Now, Donald Trump might condemn it, but his audience was actually kind of excited about it. Or at the very least, they have no feeling about him rejecting it. That extremism doesn't bother them, to the point where, at the very minimum, talking about how that extremism is going to be defeated doesn't excite them, doesn't make them happy, doesn't please them. They wanted Project 2025. This is what maybe your uncle, your neighbor, your grandma is going through right now. This is where the culture has taken them. And this is why it's so important for us to focus on culture above politics. Politics will always be evil and always be terrible and always be rife with abuse. But it's enabled by a culture of people that look the other way, that say nothing, that feel disempowered. Do what you can. Now, when we talk about the cultural level, don't take it in big bites. Very few people make big cultural change. In fact, most of the people that get credit for cultural change are just taking advantage of a culture that has already shifted. And how does that culture shift? You don't have to look outside your home most of the time. Let your kids know they're loved. Keep people from being bullied. If you see somebody who's lonely, invite them to sit with you. Change people if you can. If you have due influence over somebody and they trust what you say and you see them heading in the wrong direction, use that influence to get them back in the right direction. You know, it's very simple stuff that you can do, and this is the kind of stuff that changes the world. It always has been and always will be. Don't be waiting for that big explosion. The big explosion only occurs because you gather the powder for it. Gathering the powder happens at home and it happens low. This Project 2025, I don't know how much is going to come true. Some of it certainly will. It's very low-hanging fruit. Some of it certainly won't because it's so preposterous. But it's bad, and it is a net negative for people. And moreover, it hurts people. Challenge yourself. I'll end by saying this. I've issued this challenge before. Challenge yourself to care more about the issues as opposed to less. When this wants to hurt poor people, as Jeremy was talking about, if you're against the concept of schools or public schools or school lunches, again, the culture is what matters. Make sure that people know this is because you care about kids, not because you don't care about kids. Because there is a lot of people, including a lot of these people at Project 2025, that will gladly, happily use what appears to be your support for getting rid of, like, the Department of Education in order to discriminate against the poor and make them all the further disenfranchised. This makes it much easier to pass laws against them and to harm them. You need to stand up and tell them what's right and say, no, you don't get to use my voice. I'm against the Department of Education because it hurts kids. You're against the Department of Education because it looks like it helps kids. And these are people that you have to separate from. Otherwise, you will be lumped in with them and you will lose and you will get statism. It has happened over and over and over again before. Thanks so much for having me, guys. As always, awesome talking to you.
Yeah, thank you. Rose.
Right. Like, just to go back to what I said previously, I think this is, a valuable look into what right-wing and conservative groups would want if they were able to implement their agenda in the U.S. I don't think most of it is actually going to happen if Trump is to be reelected. I think, again, most of it is a wish list and just going to just stay a wish list. But, yeah, it's also not, we're not irrational for being concerned about some of the things that are in this agenda.
And there is a shit ton more as well.
Oh, yeah.
I'd say one.
Yeah, just looking at my notes, there's a ton I wrote down that we didn't even get into, so.
Yeah, we'll get them more on Thursday. Before you say anything, Dennis, you can do another wrap real quick after Rose finishes her wrap and her plugs.
All right. I don't have anything to plug now. I'm pretty sure you all know where to find me, so. Yeah.
I just hope you get some more leadership positions in your local party.
I'm considering it. There are a couple positions I'm considering running for.
Well, hey, if you decide to, feel free to come on the show and talk about those positions.
Hey, I just probably increased my rank within the Mesos caucus by defending the Rage Against the War Machine rally, so there's that. Yeah, I'll definitely rise up in the ranks because for that, for doing that.
Rose Leatherman confronts screeching liberals.
Just rename the stream.
Yeah. Dennis.
Yeah, and I didn't realize we were going to do a little bit of a wrap like that. My main concern, I think everybody is missing in the news media and everybody's talking about this, is they're focusing on all of these different planks and all these things, this wish list that they're putting out, that the Heritage Foundation is putting out there. It's not really anything new. It's a lot of the same old stuff that they've had before. They just got it written in documentation form now, which is great. Now they mask off. We can see it. We know what they're going to do. Great. But a lot of people are putting this off and saying, well, a lot of this can't happen. Putting out this isn't going to happen. This is all stuff that's just there to scare us. The really scary part is the change to the appointments of people inside the government. The Schedule F changes that are almost never talked about. Trump instituted or pushed through an executive order in October of 2020 when he was trying to push this through before, but he didn't get it done. He put it in place so that he could start replacing people in department locations that were saying no to him about the election. And that's what he was starting to try and use it for. he has said repeatedly that there are a lot of things that he wanted to do that he couldn't do because the people in the swamp, the people who were working in the executive branch, were telling him, no, you can't do this. Right? That's the insidious part of this. And it's not just Project 2025. This is also Agenda 47. This is what Trump has been wanting. When he talks about, the leaders of China and the leaders of Russia and how, they're able to push through what they want to do without any pushback. That's what he wants. So the goal of this is to, like I said, build the database of people that they can put in place to replace all the people in the executive branch, change all of these offices that are supposed to be working by people who know the topic and and subject matter experts, and replace them with political toadies, so that when Trump says, I want this done, he has no pushback. And the one thing in here that a lot of people are missing too is it states that the Department of Justice, the Attorney General, should be there to insulate the executive branch against any checks and balances from the Supreme Court or Congress. When they try to say, hey, you can't do this, the Attorney General is supposed to push back and say, yes, we can. This is the reasoning we're going to be doing it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So if you can do that, if you can fill all of the people inside the branch with your people who are loyal to you and not loyal to the Constitution, there's nothing you can't do. There's no way to stop that. And that's the part that's scary. Is we are supposed to have these checks and balances and these things to prevent a run amok executive branch from doing things. And they want to eliminate that. They want the unitary executive, which is what this is called. It's theory. It's been around for decades. It's what Nixon was trying to implement and thought he had in place, because that's, if the president does it, it's not illegal type thing. That's what they want out of this Project 2025, that everybody should really be focusing on much more than all these wish list things that they want to do, that the Heritage Foundation wants to be put in place, because that's the thing that's going to get implemented. That's the thing Trump wants. And that's going to be the first day one. That's what he's going to do.
Yep.
And people should be concerned and aware of that. And that's what I'm afraid of, us talking about, all these people talking about all these other things and whether it'll happen, whether it won't happen. That's the part that we should be concerned about.
Yeah. Kareem, you didn't say anything because you weren't here, but you're free to say something about what was just said, and you're also free to throw some plugs. The stream should be at probably, I want to say 7 Eastern on Thursday, if that works for people. So, I think that your viewpoint is definitely welcome, but you got to show up close to the beginning. But feel free to go.
Yeah, sure. You're talking about specifically just Project 2025 or what?
Yeah.
Or okay.
That's what the stream was about.
Okay, so I don't think it'll come true. Obviously, it's kind of funny to see Biden also drop out, because I figured that was going to happen.
Yep.
I just wasn't sure when.
I thought after he got reelected, then he'd step down and Harris would be president.
Yeah. But actually, funny enough, before I met Jeremy, or actually when I met Jeremy, I told my co-host at that time, Daniel, said, hey, bring some libertarian left people and stuff like that. I was actually a Nick Fuentes fan, so I don't know if Trump will push this, but I feel like Nick Fuentes is like, Project 2025, oh my God, this is great. Me and my cult leaders in my basement love it. So I would say his PaleoCon base definitely likes all these ideas. To me, it's just repackaged fascism. You can repackage bad ideas a million times. It seems like people want to do that. It's still a bad idea. To me, there's no right way to do the wrong thing. And it seems a lot of people want to do that. Same with like MAGA communism, like trying to be on the left and saying, I want traditional value, all this stuff, but we're going to use the state to enforce my ideas. So whether you're trying to push cultural faux pas on people, or whether you're trying to push things like economic or social reform. It's all statism. If people want certain values in their communities to be reflected, they should do that specifically in their community. And it shouldn't come from the federal government, or in my opinion, even the state government. So that being said, I'm not an expert on Project 2025. That actually doesn't bug me as much as his VP pick. Like, he got picked for VP for like 10 seconds. He's like, yeah, let's get Iran. I'm like, okay. And let's get China. I feel like it's going to be more my China, my Iran. Like, you know, if you don't want to go to war with them, you're not a patriot. However, there are still people in his administration, I think, like Steve Bannon, the Christian nationalist, which is funny to me because all my anarcho-Christian friends think that that's a contradiction in terms like MAGA communism, like you can't serve two masters. And his Christian nationalist base probably does like it. I don't think it'll get implemented, but I have other concerns of what he will implement, which is more bad foreign policy. And it doesn't seem like he's learned anything. So probably more bad fiscal policy, because my guess is the Democrats or someone's going to make up an emergency. Right. He's going to say, oh my God, he's going to print more money. And yeah, because he doesn't seem to understand that the CARES Act is one of the biggest contributors to inflation. So I think he's going to make more of the stupid mistakes. He's going to hire more neocons, and then he's going to sit around and say, oh, I don't know how this happened. So to me, it's going to be probably a repeat of the same 4 years with, you know, more rhetoric and same stuff. I personally think because of that, we still need to keep doing the libertarian thing. I really don't. Last thing is, I really don't like. You know, I liked Rechtenwald for a minute, but like now I don't, because he's like, I can't run against him. Oh my God! I'm like, yeah, you can. You bring up all the stupid things he did during 2020. You bring up his failed medical experiment. You bring up, which he claims that's his. You bring up all his bad foreign policy. Just because of what happened doesn't mean like his policy got any better or his mindset got any better. In fact, he might use that even more to say, oh, well, we got to clamp down on big, scary guns, which it seems when he was talking to RFK, that's his mentality. So I think Rechtenwald should get off the, oh, well, my drum, and he should stop making bad arguments against left libertarianism, because the argument he made was not very good. Which is, if you democratize an institution, it's a state. No, if you have a monopoly on force, it's a state. Technically, we democratized, if you want to consider our chat an institution, which I guess it gives a service of podcasts and debate, we democratize when we go on. That doesn't mean I have like a monopoly on anything. Yeah. So that's my thoughts.
But you do. You can kick people out if you want to.
True. That's not a monopoly on force technically, because a monopoly on force will voluntarily come in
from a podcast. That's true. Yes.
Yeah. People make like weird. They're like, well, you have a monopoly on force because you have a host of a podcast. I'm like, no. Because they're like, they could kick you out. I'm like, they can if you're not following rules, but that doesn't mean like they didn't force you to go on there, as far as I'm concerned.
Right. I get this.
Like, you must go on Joe Rogan.
Yeah. I get this argument in the Facebook group that I help run. People are like, oh, don't you support free speech? It's like, okay, we have a certain set of rules that you agreed to when you joined. If you can't abide by those, get the fuck out. Like, this is. Yeah, it's not. You can't just come in here and act however you want.
Yes. Yeah, but I will say this: I'm actually getting really tired of the libertarian right, actually more than anybody else, because they have some kind of insistence that for some reason, if you say that libertarian socialism just couldn't exist and no one can call themselves a libertarian, not even. Actually, they hate it. They say it's worse than even the trans thing, because you can say I'm trans. So like, well, I agree or don't agree, but they're like libertarian socialists can't exist. I guess Rojava doesn't exist. Nobody wrote, even though it's an umbrella term, and they want to keep insisting that I'm just crazy, and I've lost my grip on reality, and I'm bad boy because I stepped outside of their economic and social paradigm. So if they can stop saying that stuff like, "Oh, libertarian doesn't exist," get a life, which I keep hearing that from multiple libertarians,
They're
or that
telling
I'm
the life.
yeah, or that I'm just doing it for attention, which I'm not getting tons of attention for it anyway. I just like debating it. Yeah, that's all I had to say.
Yeah, Karen Harlows is saying that people should get away from the hive. That's probably what you're talking about. So my, I guess, final comment, I'm just going to quote a couple passages from a book called Friendly Fascism by Bertram Gross, because I've been pushing this a lot lately. Friendly fascism portrays two conflicting trends in the US and other countries of the so-called free world. The first is a slow and powerful drift toward greater concentration of power and wealth in a repressive big business and big government partnership. This drift leads down the road toward a new and subtly manipulative form of corporatist serfdom. The phrase friendly fascism helps distinguish this possible future from the patently vicious corporatism of classic fascism in the past Germany, Italy, and Japan. It also contrasts with the unfriendly present of the dependent fascisms propped up by the U.S. government in El Salvador, Haiti, Argentina, Chile, South Korea, the Philippines, and elsewhere. The other is a slower and less powerful tendency for individuals and groups to seek greater participation in decisions affecting themselves and others. This trend goes beyond mere reaction to authoritarianism. It transcends the activities of progressive groups or movements and their use of formal democratic machinery. It is nourished by establishment promises, too often rendered false, of more human rights, civil rights, and liberties. It is embodied in larger values of community, sharing, cooperation, service to others, and basic morality, as contrasted with crass materialism and dog-eat-dog competition. It affects power relations in the household, workplace, community, school, church, synagogue, and even the labyrinths of private and public bureaucracies. It could lead toward a truer democracy, and for this reason is bitterly fought. These contradictory trends are woven fine into the fabric of highly industrialized capitalism. The unfolding logic of friendly fascist corporatism is rooted in capitalist society's transnational growth and the groping resources to mounting crises in a dwindling capitalist world. Mind management and sophisticated repression become more attractive to would-be oligarchs when too many people try to convert democratic promises into reality. On the other hand, the alternative logic of true democracy is rooted in humankind's long history of resistance to unjustified privilege, and in spontaneous or organized reaction, other than fright or apathy, to concentrated power and inequality, injustice, or coercion. So there's that segment in the beginning, and then I just want to read one other thing, and I'll open it up to comment before I book, because I'm sure there will be comment. But the comment that I want on these conflicts among the few, Project 2025 being one of the most recent conflicts at the top levels, are not mere imperfections in ruling class power, imperfections to be ironed out in the course of increased centralization and concentration. Rather, they are an integral part of the process, whereby a ruling coalition comes to power and expands its power. Often, as I have shown in Chapter 1 on classic fascism, the more powerful a ruling oligarchy, the sharper and rougher the conflicts among the oligarchs may become. So long as unity is somehow attained on the most basic matters, internal conflicts may bring new options into the open, thereby avoiding routinization and serving as a vital source of strength. Moreover, there is a vast difference in the nature of conflicts at the lower levels of the American power structure and those at its highest levels. At the lower levels, conflicts are more numerous, intricate, and unresolved. They often constitute what C. Wright Mills describes as a semi-organized stalemate, a way of hampering the more direct expression of popular aspiration. Things like, cis versus trans, and fucking affirmative action DEI wokes versus the hardworking American blah blah, that sort of thing. All these manufactured immigrants versus normal people, fucking all these things, you know. A way of hampering more direct expression of popular aspiration, and a form of divide and rule through which the few at the very top gain immensely through the divisions among their subordinates. In contrast, conflicts among the very few at the top of the establishment determine the major public issues in American life, not only when there is a deep political crisis, as Papandreou suggests, but also in normal times. So, that's my statement on the matter. People should read Bertram Gross's Friendly Fascism because it's an excellent book that was very ahead of its time in a lot of these aspects. So, people are free to say some words about that if they want, or we could just vote. It's up to y'all.
Yeah, it's one I've been meaning to check out for a while because you've been shilling it for a while.
Yeah.
How much is he paying you?
I think I might be wrong about this. I think maybe he's dead. So.
Oh, okay.
I can check here.
Understandable.
If anybody wants to say anything, though, they're free to. That was a lot. Yeah. All right. Go.
I really think it's interesting because there's a lot of friendly fascist organizations to me that plainly exist that are convinced they're doing the right thing. Neoliberals are one of them.
Yeah.
I would also say that, like, you know, if I don't want to throw names, but libertarians who advocate for the existence of NATO, that's definitely friendly fascism. People like, fine, I'll name Destiny, that's friendly oh, come on, man, we want the same system, but can't we just have more wealth redistribution? And we can bomb people, but I just want more diversity.
Diversity in the institutions where we're committing a genocide in Israel. You know.
Right.
Yeah, come on, man.
Just
But
put rainbow flags on the sides of their bomber planes.
And then just the other side of that, which is a bunch of neoliberals who take the more like conservative end of the neoliberal, like sort of Thatcherite, Reaganite thing, and they're just like, yeah, Russia, like they're the BRICS stands, the MAGA communists, the Trumpers. Yeah.
Yes, those people.
Yeah,
also liberal.
He died in 1997, so. Yeah.
Okay.
Also liberal Zionists. Also, I don't know if I would call them exactly friendly, but some people who support Malay, because they try and pretend to be like, oh no, Kareem, we're just, he's just faking it. We want to help with the economy, blah, 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 blah. We don't want to do this. We don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So.
Well, anyway, I'll hold till Rose gets back, but basically that's my general point. We're dealing with a friendly fascist dystopia, and the more we realize that, the more we can push back against it by pulling the mask of friendliness off all these little aspects of fascism that are slowly encroaching and crushing us all. So that's my point. That's the reason I read that. So.
Are they crushing us all?
Yes, we can choose to resist the crushing pressure and fight back, but we have to recognize the problem in order to be able to solve it.
I don't think, the only thing I'll say is this. I don't think these things have a really good foundation. And in my opinion, actually what I'm seeing is more positive stuff than negative stuff. Neoliberalism, most people are agreeing, isn't working.
Most people don't know what neoliberalism is.
Uh-huh.
Well, okay, just because, fair enough, they don't know what it is, but they know the effects of it and they don't like it. So,
or they know general things that might be symptomatic of it and they have no connection to any policy.
And they think voting for the other team is going to fix the problem.
That's the
Yep.
problem.
Or
That's
not,
the problem.
or they're not voting because they just don't want to become invested in the process at all, or because they don't actually care about the thing as long as they can get their Netflix and their Pornhub.
Mhm.
Like, let's be real here. The common person doesn't give a fucking shit about this stream, yo.
No, they don't.
There is overwhelmingly more negative than positive.
Right.
Well-
Most people, you tell them you're an anarchist, and they just dismiss you as completely insane.
Give you
They
that
used
fluoride
to.
stare.
Well, sometimes. Like,
Somalia.
Yep, most
you know
of the
what?
time.
You know what's funny? They used to. Now people will sit there and at least listen to what I have to say. But we actually have pretty good examples now that work. I don't know if it's a gauge for anything, like, because I'm not like pulling I don't do statistics anyway. I never actually enjoyed that class. But I don't, and Bill Gates proved you can lie with statistics. But you go to any video.
You're getting fed an algorithm of the responses, though.
Okay, I'm getting fed of an algorithm of the responses, but I can see all the responses. Look, here is the fact is 9 times out of 10, almost all the comments on Chiron, on Rojava, and on the Zapatistas are overwhelmingly positive. And they fought for and someone said, like, well, blah, 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 like this, your workers' co-op wasn't working. I didn't realize it took the Zapatistas 50, I think they were at it since 70, in the 70s, 80s. It took them 50 years to get going. So it wasn't like, hey, man, can we get thing going? They're like, oh, yeah, man, we were being tyrannical. Did you know that? No, it took them 50 years, but they got it going. And that's why I'm pretty positive, because there are leftists who are like, hey, just because you start a worker co-op in like 3 months doesn't mean, the state's going to flop.
And a lot of these videos are controlled by leftists who moderate their comment sections, yo. Who don't like it. So I'm not going to take the comment sections in social media as a general census survey. That doesn't fucking work for me.
Okay, it doesn't work, but like, take a look at the Zapatistas. It took 50 years and they got going. So to me, that's a really positive thing, is like, hey.
Sure, but the Zapatistas are a tiny minority in the world. So it's not a matter of there's more positive than negative.
The world is made up of tiny minorities.
Yeah, but most of those people don't give a fuck. Most of those people are trying not to die. They don't care about, like, the deeper philosophy or spreading global anarchy. There's not more positive than negative. It just doesn't exist. You could say that there's enough positive to be motivated. That'd be a reasonable statement. But, like, just say that there's more positive than negative. Fuck no, there isn't.
To develop software, which you're using right now, you generally need an MVP. Like, if someone comes to me and just says an idea, I'm like, I don't really care. Also, if you go like pitch Mark Cuban, like, or someone like that, like, here, I have an idea. They don't care. Like, they need a minimum value product, something that shows the idea works. And I talked with Keith about this, and he said, look, we have tons and tons of theory. Bakunin's a good writer. Rothbard's also a decent writer. I've read some of your stuff. A lot of good writing, a lot of good stuff,
Right.
a lot of trial and error. The only one who someone took and made us was Bookchin, but we have proof of the thing working. It is working. There are
Sure.
people who try. So, I think the fact that Rojava exists and operates the way it does puts me on more of the positive white pill side, even though it's a small. Okay, you can say, okay, the Kurds are a small minority, fine. But it's not that the Kurds are a small minority, it's that thing works.
Sure.
Okay. See how it works. See how Abdullah Öcalan set it up. And then you have the basis to replicate it.
Sure, and I'm not saying don't be hopeful. I'm not saying just cancel out all your positivity. I'm just saying measure it, because saying that there's more positive than negative is horseshit. Most people aren't the Kurds.
If we freed Abdullah Öcalan and he was able to get his ideas out there, it wouldn't. Like, I even made the point. I went on that stream with Clint, with Michael Rechtenwald, and said, they're like, is Trump good? Is J.D. Vance good? I'm like, look, you're arguing over the Titanic. I said Ron Paul went to our convention and said the empire has fallen. Not that it will fall, that it has fallen. I said, I agree with that statement. Do you got? And they're like, yeah. Okay, so you're rearranging chairs on the Titanic. I don't mind talking about it, but I told them clearly, you're rearranging chairs on the Titanic. You need a good model going forward. We have one. Abdullah Öcalan created the best model in this 3D dimension that I can find.
Okay.
Let's try.
Sure, we can try that. Maybe then at some point there will be at least 1% of positive versus the negative. But right now the positives do not outweigh the negatives. The world is mostly not run by people like the Rojava folks. That's not true. So to say that there's more positive than negative is not an accurate statement.
All you would need to do is convince enough local governments.
Okay, that's not going to happen though.
It's possible.
Only.
It's possible.
So we need to start doing things ourselves. And that's my message. Fight the fascists, understand the fascism, oppose the friendly fascism, which is its most insidious current form, and start it yourself, now, without government permission. Smash the fucking state. Thank you all for coming.
All right. Yeah, it's Jeremiah.
That is once I can get this there. Yeah.
Did you find any Secret Service on the roof?